waiting. Maybe this show. Okay. We're not going to do a theme, Sean. You know why? Because
we're late.
I'm that kind of late. Oh my gosh. So should I tell everybody that my horribly stupid story about bad planning? Does everybody want to hear that? Or do you want to just jump on into talking about why this story is I'm so conflicted about this story.
Oh yeah.
Tell it if it's funny, if it's entertaining.
If it's funny, okay. No, it's not. It's not. It was just stupid stuff.
You need to tell it because it's part of the lore. It's now part of the lore about how we can never start the show properly.
Okay, so as you guys know, I work with youth in a rural area, and tonight was a reception for one of our grantors. Right, they had a big annual, not annual, but a open house. Invited people from all over the Panhandle, and so I was nominated as the representative for our agency because I helped write the grant. So I go to the thing and I schmooze a little, and I'm really awkward there, and I leave, and I get heading down the road, and I got left a little bit late, but not too bad. Get about 5 miles down the road and realize I forgot to fill up with gas before I left Scotts Bluff, which means I've got about a 65-mile drive, and not sure I have enough gas to make it back. And there's not really a gas station between places, so I had to turn back around, go get gas, and then come back out again. So there you go.
So what's the computer story? Because there's always a narrative about the computer.
When I went to load it back on again, it just wouldn't load up. I was sitting there waiting for it to just spin. I was going to restart it, and it's like, I'm updating your antivirus. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. Great timing. So here's the thing about this. Like every week, I just use my computer. It's a laptop. I take it places. I work all over, and I drive. I open it. I work. I drive. I open it. I work. And for some reason, Wednesday nights, it just like, I can't move forward anymore. Like, why Wednesdays?
I don't. It's really funny.
and when the show was Thursdays, it was Thursdays. I'd have problems. I don't know.
I think you need to get a computer that's a little bit higher up in the technological competency than the TI-89 calculator you're running.
Yeah. Hey. I'm not rich. It's running on a 60. Come on.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm not one of you big city spendthrifts. God.
Wait for another Joe Biden COVID check.
Yeah, you can upgrade your calculator. Dave's in chat. He's been very faithful. Thank you for waiting.
I think he's been entertaining everyone who's waiting. Who
you rock,
have
Dave.
To type themselves. So appreciate that, Dave. Thanks for coming on. So I heard in mildly unflattering terms that this is the first superhero comic right there that Matt C has read. Is that true, Matt?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, this I mean I've hardly read any superhero stuff, and this is definitely.
Wait a minute. Wait. First Superman. Okay, when you said first superhero, I was like, I gave you a copy of Omega Girl.
No, Superman.
I probably read more indie superhero stuff, and that's hard to come by. Than I've read mainstream superhero stuff.
Oh, okay.
And here's the crazy thing to me about that is like I'm old enough. I am the oldest person on the panel, but I'm old enough that Superman was still in the Sunday funnies when I was coming up, right? My first exposure to superhero comics was in the Sunday paper every week, The Adventures of Superman as a Sunday strip. That's how old I am. That's how many years old I am.
I feel like my first exposure to Superman, honestly, is like going on streams with Matt Rhys and Marm and having them try to tell me like it's actually worth it. No, you should try it. And it's been like 2 years of them, you know, me occasionally coming on and then hearing this, and every step, every time I come back on, I'm closer. And this time I finally
tried. It's the 1940s blue collar introduction to Inkling mythopoeic epic thinking.
There you go. I actually do think there's some truth to that.
That's good.
But not.
I'm converted. I'm mostly converted now, so I can kind of chill for superhero stuff at this point. I couldn't in 2019.
Yeah. I think it's even in a way some of the creators didn't realize and still don't realize, which is I think part of why a lot of modern comics miss that magic that some of the old stuff had, is because they're far enough removed away from mythic thinking. But that's not the point of today's show. That's a whole
it's not
thing. No, not directly. Although
yeah.
I tell you what, guys, in the new year, I'm thinking sometime early January, I want to do a Patriotic Heroes Day.
I was gonna say, if you want the myth, Matt, you need to read All-Star Superman, because that's the mythic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's my favorite, but it's the mythic one.
So here's the problem with Superman. Is there a good Superman book if you don't like old school 19? Well, then it's weird, because like Golden Age Superman is kind of like a crazy tough guy, running around like like he spanks femme fatales, he does all kinds of naughty stuff, he threatens evil bankers, right? And then Silver Age Superman is just like the super nicest guy who's ever lived, right? So it's like they're two old school Supermen, and then All-Star Superman is sort of like a love letter to that era of Superman. So
from somebody who hasn't read a Superman comic in 40 years. That's more,
right?
That's a trick.
It's more of a love letter to the idea of Superman, and with some homage.
I'm thinking of Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Man of Tomorrow.
Grant Morrison's,
right. That was Morrison writing an ending story.
More
Superman of the Silver Age. Yeah,
it was more like an homage to the sun god that Superman represents.
Okay, Matt C, how left out are you right now?
Well, no, I've heard this. I mean, this is just swirling in our circles, for years. So I've heard all this.
Can I say something about the radio drama? I love the radio drama when I was a kid.
Before we do that, let's set the stage a little.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you who guys don't know, this book right here, right? Superman Smashes the Klan was adapted from a radio drama. Now, the radio drama that ran from 1944 through 52 or something like that. Was also where Kryptonite comes from, and a whole bunch of stuff. I think Jimmy Olsen,
Perry White was introduced.
Perry White.
Mm-hmm.
And before this existed, this book existed, which is a story. I mean, it's a historical book about the radio play and about Superman and about post-war America and all that kind of stuff. So this is a nonfiction book that it tells some of the background behind the story that this became. So there you go.
Which did we get snippets of that basically in those back pages of the Okay, I read those too.
There's some of it. There's some of it in the back.
So speaking of setting the stage, I'd love to actually play just like the intro or so of Superman Smash of the Klan. And it's in like public domain. I'm pretty sure we're good to go. But I'll boost the audio here. But this is how it starts, and you'll hear some stuff that you recognize if you're familiar with Superman mythos.
Yeah.
More powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Kellogg's Pep. P-E-P, Pep. Kellogg's Pep, the Sunshine Cereal, presents The Adventures of Superman. Today we begin a brand new story. A story of baseball and the discovery of a menace that will lead Superman and his friends through many dangerous adventures.
So that's the intro.
To the adventures of Superman.
Pep. I had to look up Kellogg's Pep. Apparently, it was a very popular cereal for a time, but it wasn't sugary enough, so it fell out of favor.
Yeah, my youngest was we were hanging out listening over the weekend, and he was just like, "What is Kellogg's Pep?" So he spent like 20 minutes reading everything there is to know about the thing. So
what Marm just pointed out, adventures of I can't even do it of Superman. Is that like a Midwestern thing? Like, where does that? I've never even heard that.
These guys, what is it? New Yorkie?
I think that's actually transposed
Matt
from
Reese.
the intercontinental accent.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just
Because
a lot of
transatlantic accent.
A lot of the characters do have some pretty heavy New York accents at the baseball game.
Yeah, definitely. But you guys know about the transatlantic accent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, we're getting into the real tangents now.
Yeah. It's really out there. So the transatlantic accent was an engineered accent that finishing schools taught, so that American speech wouldn't sound too weird to Europeans as they traveled abroad. And your radio announcer, your 20s, 30s newsreel announcers also use the transcontinental accent. That's what FDR spoke in, and Woodrow Wilson. So if you find those old things, that was finishing schools actually taught people to talk funny so that they could blend in with Europeans.
Whoop-de-doo. Dave says in the radio show, when Kal-El's space capsule crashes to Earth, Superman emerges as a full-grown adult donned in his red and blue outfit. I did not know that.
Yes. He didn't really have Ma and Pa Kent, which is also true in the Fleischer cartoons. In the Fleischer cartoons, he's raised in an orphanage, and he goes straight to. It's almost like he just comes up with Clark Kent because I need something, right? So, and you can things like the theme song. I think are inherited from the Fleischer cartoon. Like the very first radio drama didn't have any of that. So what I wanted to say about the radio show is if anyone has any love for the Fleischer cartoon, they would love this radio drama. If anyone wants an example of a Superman stories that have a lot of dramatic tension, the radio shows are great. Like I think there's this midwit opinion that you can't tell a good story about Superman without kryptonite because he has no weaknesses. Sure you can. Just have a bunch of evil anti-American gangsters threatening to shoot Perry White and Jimmy Olsen, and there you go. There's dramatic tension right there.
As you mentioned, the radio show is the one that actually had to invent kryptonite to amp up the tension at a certain point.
Did you know how? Have you listened to the Kryptonite radio show?
I've not listened to that one. No.
It's great. It works completely different than Kryptonite has worked anywhere else. It doesn't stop him from being invulnerable. It just makes it so he can't move. So these criminals have Superman in their house and he can't move, but they can't kill him. They keep trying everything. They try shooting him. And what is it?
I think it works. I think it might work differently in different shows because there's one called the Atom Man where he's like really messed up by it.
Yeah.
So I think Kryptonite evolved into being more deadly because there was the Atom Man who actually does show up. He was in that image, and it's actually a little disappointing how he gets portrayed in. Let me reshare this. Yeah. So that like very very early moment, Atom Man shows Atom Man, and he's basically the only villain who is capable of fighting Superman on his own terms, and he uses the like kryptonite blast, basically kind of like. Metallo basically uses. Right,
exactly.
And he apparently messes Superman up quite a bit. And it's like, he was a real threat. He was like almost the only threat. And during the radio show years, apparently, and he gets like clowned in like 2 pages here.
Yeah.
So like,
pretty close.
All right. Drawn Talk says, I'm here to just disagree with everything that Matt Reese says.
Well, that was fair. I did that to him yesterday.
Oh, okay. Turnabout's fair play. Evie says she's here.
So the other thing I want to point out as we get going on here, they did not specify what color kryptonite in the radio play, I don't think. But I might be wrong about that. But I don't believe so.
I want to comment something about this scene that I have a very I'm so conflicted about this book, but I want to say one nice thing about Gene Luen Yang first, which is that he did do a lot of research into Superman and the radio show. And when he does creative ideas, his creative ideas feel like they were done respectfully. So one thing he did is he has Superman not flying yet, which is true of the earliest versions of Superman. And he comes up with an origin story for how Superman starts to fly. So Superman really would do things like run across telephone wires before he could fly.
Except for the fact that by the time the story that came out that this is being adapted from, he actually could fly and have
the radio show is very clear about that.
So like it's weird because so this is an adaptation. it's not a strict adaptation of the Superman and the Clan of the Fiery Cross radio adventure, which ran for 16 episodes, which Monday through Friday was about almost 4 weeks. So, which is an eternity in children's entertainment. So this would have been like a whole, nearly an entire month of every evening listening to this story unfold.
And it's about 3 hours long if you add all the intros. I really wish the people that would have cut it for the because you've got 2 minutes of intros for every episode and lead in. You could have trimmed it down to about a feature length movie, and it would have been a lot easier to intake, I think. Without Oregon beating you to death every.
I found a version that cut out the ads, though. I don't know. Maybe there's more than one.
I started to like the PEP pep.
Yeah,
I
didn't mind it.
It grew on me.
So wait, can we give her like our spoiler free, like, can we do like a cliff notes?
Yeah,
I do want to go ahead and point out. Before we get on, I want to point out one quick thing. That Twitless already mentioned it, but I think it's really important to drive home because we actually had somebody comment last week when we announced this show. The title of the comic is Superman Smashes the Klan, which does tell you what happens. The original radio play is the Clan of the Fiery Cross, right? And they specifically named the organization that way to avoid any legal repercussion from the KKK, which was a legal entity at the time. So the Clan of the Fiery Cross is a cool name, but it is like one of the first indications of some of the differences between the radio play and the graphic novel.
And they go says, "No, Matt, you're wrong. The title is not Superman Smashes the Klan." This is going to be a fun night.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
All right, I really like Matt C's idea of us doing a spoiler-free quick take.
Yes,
can I go first?
Yes.
Because like I feel like I might be the outlier and it's going to be interesting.
Okay.
So not being able to evaluate whether or not Gene is doing anything, like if he's violating lore or anything, or if he's changing things in respectful ways, I can't evaluate any of that. I can just look at the 1944 radio drama, and I can look at this 3-issue comic. I think I really liked it. I think this is, especially with us tracking Gene as a Christian and as someone who's trying to tell, he's interested in telling superhero stories in that light, and he's trying to reconcile a multi-ethnic country and its heritage with his Christianity, and I guess in a culture that isn't, broadly speaking, isn't Christian. It's a post-Christian culture, and he seems to be challenged by that, and he doesn't seem to have clear answers. Maybe none of us do, but I feel like I guess I would just say that I feel like he's wrestling with that in really interesting and mature ways, and this is probably one of his best pieces, his best writing pieces on that same topic, which is the only topic he writes about.
My conflicted thoughts almost segue perfectly in with that. Like my first
fun.
Okay, so when I reviewed it, I gave it a positive review, and I think I said something like, I don't get why this microaggression element is here, and it doesn't feel like he resolves it at the end. And then I kind of like thought back about it, and I reread it, and I just remember I didn't enjoy the whole second. I really loved the first issue. I remember reading the first issue and just thinking, if Gene Luen Yang can nail this could be one of the greatest Superman stories ever told. This could be him landing the ship, and like every book so far, it's like this has been the topic. Every book so far is he's always talking about this interpersonal struggle of his Chinese identity and assimilation. So maybe what we're going to get is that story and a great Superman story. And I feel like I've kind of been defending him in previous books where we've gone back and forth about that. I feel like in this book, his the author's personal struggle with his own identity is hurting his ability to tell that good story. And I even picked up the Christian elements he was bringing in, and it annoyed me again because I feel like in American Born Chinese, he's basically telling the same story of I have this interpersonal problem of being a Chinese American. In American Born Chinese, he has a really good answer to that problem in the dialogue between the Monkey King and the godlike figure. In Superman Smashes the Klan, it's sort of like we run. It's two books in one. We'll run around with Superman smashing the Klan for a bit. We'll run around with Roberta and see her interpersonal problems with Tommy for a bit. I don't feel like Yang was so kind of like from a plot construction standpoint. I don't think Yang was able to make a story where these pieces hold together. It's like it takes a really good writer and a really thoughtful writer to write this work. So it's not a work of cheap propaganda, but I basically feel like he flubs it, especially in the last issue, where I'll probably save my thoughts on that since this is a spoiler-free
interesting
preview.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, well, first off, James Hayes says, going in blind, my first impression is that I hate the artwork. It's too goofy. And Evie follows up with that by saying, I do usually like Guru Hiru's work, but I don't like the design on Superman. I'm fine with the other characters I've seen.
I specifically hate the spit curl.
Yeah. I think it might be
dramatic.
It might be the fact that it's not a typical Americanized style, so it looks a little weird to people to our expectations. That might be playing into it. Almost as if you took like maybe a manga character and then draw them in like an Image comic Jim Lee style or something. It might feel different. Perhaps that's what's going on there. But when it comes to this work specifically, I was going to open up with a bit of a joke and say, so how have you guys enjoyed Yang telling the exact same story for now the fourth time in a row?
Yep.
Because because this is the exact same story that he tells in American Born Chinese and the exact same story he tells in The Shadow Hero. And I would argue to an extent, it's the exact same story he tells in both Boxers and Saints. So it's interesting how, and it's as writers, we do tell our stories repeatedly. So I'm not entirely holding it against him, but there's a certain point where I'm like, dude, you've told this one before.
I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with that. To be completely
I feel like you could have called it American, Kryptonian Born Chinese, and it would have.
Oh goodness.
And the parallels work.
That one's missing something there, Twitless.
So I will say that I'm conflicted on this one. There are parts of the story that I think work pretty well, even with the artwork. The coloring, for example, is pretty. I think the coloring is really great. There are elements of the story and the adaptation that I think work pretty well, but there's something that didn't sit with me, and it. I think ultimately, the story actually does less of a good job than the story upon which it is based at its goals. I think the radio show, and so I'll say it this way: the radio show portrays bigotry as the exception and not the rule. It basically portrays an America where racism is an aberration. It's something that is not normal. It is something that is only crooks do, and it's something that is it's like this alien entity. Oh my gosh, how could
it's un-American?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and we're such a swell country. We don't have room for that kind of stuff in this amazing, awesome country we have.
So Yang's work flips the script on that. Yang's script is basically racism is actually the norm, and being not racist is the exception. And so he's actually his worldview on the core issue here is completely opposite than the one that the radio show has. And I think there's numerous examples of how this plays out. And so I would say that was I think because there's something I didn't like, but I think I put my finger on it with that. And ultimately, I think the radio show does a better job of the goal of this story. And the goal was twofold. The goal number one was to portray the KKK as a bunch of crooks, and to kind of break down their mystique. And so that's the way they're portrayed in the radio show. And the second goal was again to show how normal people racism was, like I said, an aberration, and this sense of fair play and true Americanism was being this very civic national idea. Yang's message is very different from that, and that's the part that I found to be, I think, the most unsettling.
As we get into this, I guess like the big fat question for me is, what is Yang's relation as a Catholic to progressive racial theory?
Well, before we get to that, we need Rhys's. We need Rhys's.
We do need Rhys.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a question.
This
that
is
I think
so
we'll
good.
So here's my my kind of spoiler-free review. You're not wrong about any of the stuff that's been said. I think it's all relatively accurate. I think that this does. I disagree with Marm. I think it pulls it out a little at the end with one very specific line that will probably show up later. But it was there are several things where Yang doesn't go hard into what makes it un-American, what makes it bad to have these sort of things, and he puts stuff on the table that isn't necessarily on the table in the radio play. I think the radio play, part of it's the length. Radio play was 3 hours long, right? And it had a lot of words in there. And so I
yeah, it kind of drags. Goodness.
This is gonna be great.
I deserve every bit of it. Yeah.
I missed the I wish we got I want to see the draw and talk version of this.
Yeah, I know, right?
He's just
Throw the mega fist, yeah.
I'm glad he's back. Tyler, I'm glad you're back. I think
my God.
our ecosystem needed you. So welcome back.
Okay, but anyway, yeah, I think I think he does pull it off at the end, but I think that there are certain elements of the aspect that because Yang won't name names, or because he doesn't believe that the right names are the right names, his history is
it's also possible. It's also possible DC editorial could have had an impact on what Yang wanted to do. Like, I strongly suspect that Yang wanted to do another American-born Chinese story, and someone at DC editorial said, "Look, we need more of Superman running around fighting the Klan," because you can kind of tell like there's a whole chunk in the middle where it's like, why are the kids here? wait, why is Superman letting them run around and do this stuff? You should tell them to go out, right? So maybe like the one caveat is we don't know how much DC editorial fought with him. Well, although the fact that Yang got to call out DC editorial in his essay at the back of the book, like that is super based. Like, anyone who takes a giant dump on DC editorial deserves mega applause in my book.
When did he dump on DC editorial?
Oh yeah.
You made fun of them for having the very first DC book have a racial caricature of a Chinese guy.
Okay. Yeah,
and that's one of the things that he did mention, but one of the things that he didn't mention is like Detective Comics. One of the first features in it was serializing the original Fu Manchu novel by Sax Rohmer, and so that's actually Fu Manchu on the cover.
Yeah. That's
so literal Fu Manchu. All right,
literal Fu Manchu.
Definitely.
He's not just a stereotype image of it. That's literally the Sax Rohmer Fu Manchu character,
the Devil Doctor himself.
Yeah. So, so I mean, take that for what you will. Maybe Sax Rohmer was off base on that. I have not read the complete. The only Fu Manchu I've read is the section that was reprinted in Detective Comics 27, because I have like 3 reprint editions of that comic. As a Batman fan.
So Rhys, I think what you need to do is every statement that you're going to make, you need to like send it in a private message to one of us, and then we can say it.
I love the dedication. It's sort of like, if Tyler was like, screw it, I'm not drawing tonight. I usually draw and listen to things. No, he knows my wrath.
No. He's just talking tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Just talking. No draw, just talk.
Oh,
okay.
Now Evie's disagreeing with everything we say.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you guys think about this as an entryway into talking about the narrative,
the book,
the narrative itself? So in order to get at the 1940s radio play, he adds some characters to kind of, I suppose, like add an extra layer that he feels he can more comfortably speak through, I guess. And he takes
I hated
Roberta.
that. I
Okay.
hated that.
I totally would have loved the addition of. So I'm not like a purist. I'm not like everything has to match the old thing or it's bad. I would have loved having the Roberta character as a central point. Mm-hmm. If I thought that Yang knew what he wanted to say. So maybe like a good illustration would be, Roberta's parents, her dad wants to assimilate and only wants his kids to speak in English. Their mom speaks in Chinese and was more comfortable in Chinatown, right? So obviously the setup is, the two parents represent two different problems that a Chinese American wrestles with, right? So the angle you think it's going to be is they're going to talk it out and we're going to see how both sides have a valid perspective. But then the dad ends up being a complete ineffective twerp and the mom is wonderful and supportive. Yeah.
This was my issue partly because Tommy Lee, when he's for those of you who haven't listened to the radio show, Tommy Lee is mentioned several times and in the radio show, and they did a really clever job of through radio introducing him, because the first time he talks, he has this New York accent. Basically, he talks like every of the other kids. And it's actually much like, is it the second episode? It takes a while.
It's the third or fourth episode.
It takes a while for it to come out that he's actually Chinese. That was interesting. The messaging of the radio was very clear that, because you could not hear a difference, there wasn't a difference until the racist characters made it a difference.
And then they introduced his father, and Dr. Lee, and Dr. Lee does have an accent,
right?
But Tommy does not.
But Tommy does not. Tommy is basically fully just as American as everyone else. They just say his skin color is just a different color than yours. He might go to a different church, but he's just as American as you or I, and that's the message of the radio show. That's not good enough for American-born Chinese Yang, and so he has to invent. He has to invent Roberta because Roberta goes by. She wants to go by her Chinese name. Tommy is fully American. He's even got like I don't know which borough, but he's got a New York accent. Roberta is American-born Chinese all over again. If he wanted to just have a Chinese character, you had Tommy. I would have loved to have seen more from Tommy, but that's not good enough for Yang, because Yang wants to have a character who has these identity problems. Tommy doesn't really have as many of those problems. He's fine with just being as American, as baseball loving as everyone else.
But doesn't he internalize some yellow stereotypes? Like,
so he has jokes like,
sure,
you can't fry these wontons, and what's the other? And he jokes about Confucius.
Right. Well, so, I think that would be, I believe that would be problematic for Yang, but it also shows the same kind of camaraderie that you saw from the Rat Pack.
Yeah.
So
this is where I'm sorry. Finish your point, Rhys.
So that's one thing is like, so while Yang might feel that that's problematic, the way it's described in the way it's shown in the story is that this is Tommy associating with the other guys. This is Tommy. Sorry, I'm
not laughing at you, Matt. Sorry, I was not laughing at your point. I'm laughing at Don Talk, who is just committed as all hell.
I know, it's amazing. But yeah, I think I think it's reflective of a positive way of dealing with it. You can't make fun of me because I'm already doing it, and I don't even feel bad about it because hey, listen, you stupid Mick, we can be fun, we can have that kind of camaraderie together. Yeah. So
that's true. That is a side that is not discussed at all in elite circles. That's actually that's a form of power in a way to joke about yourself and with others and to dominate that. Yeah.
The funny thing about that too is at the same time there's this big argument about the N-word, right? And like people say, oh no, the African Americans are claiming that back for themselves as a set of power, but they refuse to allow, with these same circles, refuse to allow anybody else to own their stereotypes as a way of asserting their power within their own circles, and thereby empowering everybody to just be honest with each other. So it's
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
It's frustrating to me that's in play with the same kind of critical theory kind of stuff.
Neville Heim says it may be secondhand. Just plays off your point, Rhys. It may be secondhand, but everything I hear about the Marines is that they give each other the Raz to form that camaraderie.
Exactly. I mean, and that was when we were playing basketball when I was in junior high and all kinds of stuff. And as long as you don't make sheep shagging jokes, you can make fun of my ethnicity too. Anyway, but one of the things that
those Welsh jokes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I know. But one of the things I did want to point out too, and I didn't find it here. The other thing about the Roberta character, something that I think that you might be missing, Twitless, was that she feels really awkward in the burbs, right? She's like, maybe I should have been better back in Chinatown. Maybe I would fit in better back there. But then when she and the kids from Unity House go to the movies, they run into a couple of her friends from the Chinatown days.
Right.
And they just totally snub her. And they're like, oh, you're too good for us now? And then she's like, and Roberta is like, she was so happy to see them. But then she reflects in her internal monologue when they went in to watch the not Flash Gordon movie that everybody that like they were never cool to her. They always snubbed her, even when she was back in Chinatown. So maybe it's them.
So I don't think because to answer your point, I agree that Roberta has and Yang. It's to Yang's credit that he allows Roberta to not be. He allows her space. He allows space in the narrative to be at least ambiguous towards Roberta's perspective and not just portray her as she's right in the way she sees the world. That being
the way
said,
she sees the world develots too.
Well,
I mean,
that being said, though, it doesn't develop. I think as much as it doesn't develop that much, and it's still pretty much. Because she is pretty much the POV character, her just being like, "Oh, I could be wrong." She's not that wrong, and her worldview develops a little bit, but not that much. And it's like, and again, in terms of the characters that we have, you could have simply made Tommy Lee the point of view character for this story, but that would not allow for Yang to explore the things that he wants to explore, that he explores every single time he gets his hands on a character of this type. He wants to have this character have this like, well, I'm American, but Chinese as well. So call me by my Chinese name, but I'm also living in America. Tommy Lee is full integrationist, and that's not good enough for Yang. And that's like
I want to dovetail into that.
Right.
So Yang, as a talented writer, knows how to write developed characters who go through change and have dimension to them. He even knows how to like theme things so that Roberta's story very nicely parallels Superman's story. The reason I was at first conflicted, and the reason looking back on it, this is like my least favorite of Yang's books that I've read, is by the end. And what's funny is I actually kind of like put aside my feelings about Superman and started caring more about who is Yang and what is Yang trying to say as I evaluated this book. By the end, what is the character's takeaway? What have the characters learned? It's almost like the fight between Roberta and Tommy never gets resolved. There's not even like a scene where she says, Tommy, you're right. It is important to try to fit in with friends. And Tommy says, Roberta, you're right. I shouldn't be fake. Or like he didn't even do something like that stupid simple. It's just kind of like, oh, the Klan shows up. Okay, the end.
Yeah. That's true. And even in American Born Chinese, he wrote a potential answer, a suggested answer to that sort of tension of how to resolve that. And he doesn't hear. And maybe that's because of editorialization from DC at this point, where he's trying to. He can't tell all of American Born Chinese and a superhero story. He can only do half of it. Maybe that's what's going on.
Before we go any farther, I have to call out Yang for the worst mistake I have ever seen in writing.
I can't wait for him to hear all of
Okay.
Yeah.
the.
So,
the-
Before
wait,
we get onto that, I want to put one more
go ahead,
thing
go
into
ahead,
that.
go
One more thing into the discussion about Roberta's character development, right? The thing about it is, when you look at Roberta, there are two characters that she develops specific relationships with, right? And that's Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen.
Yep.
Right? The crackeriest crackers in the story. So, well, that's not
The white savior.
They're the pastiest, but they're not really crackery.
Yeah.
Because pretty sure Jimmy's he's pulling that Celtic.
Well,
He's a ginger.
Olsen's a Norwegian name. But anyway, they're gingers, Norsemen. But point out is that that's one thing as far as that goes. She patterns herself after Lois Lane, after her boldness, after her investigativeness. Lois's desire to say, when you uncover your community's secrets, you're part of your community. That's the thing that pushes her to further integrate herself into the story. So I think that that Roberta's adaptation, her environment, are along the line with her choices, and she gets to own that rather than feel like she's being pushed into it. And that's one of the things that I do appreciate. But
no, there are things about Roberta's character that I do appreciate. Her Lashin. Okay, but this, I got to call this out. Okay, this is the biggest mistake I have ever seen. All right, so Lashin or Roberta and Tommy get into a little fight, and then this little paper airplane comes down, and we can see that the brother says, "Sorry for calling you a pooper. Can we be friends again? Yes or no?" Okay. Anyone who has ever had siblings ever in the history of brothers and sisters, never, ever, ever would a baseball playing boy send a note with checkbox, please, yes or no, be my friend, to a sister. This is like, I'm sitting there going, is Yang a single child? Like, holy crap.
I think he is.
Okay.
Yeah, this is I chalk this up to like an ESL situation, like not to make fun too much, but like maybe he just he saw his friends doing this with other girls, and he didn't think, well, I'll just do this with the girl in my life, my younger sister. Like he didn't understand this is like specifically only for, So aside from all the Superman related stuff, I think take the biggest issue that with this. This is a plot hole.
Dovetailing into that, I feel like Yang struggles a bit with writing child interactions. And the thought I kept popping into my head is like once in the baseball and once when like Superman was having an awkward moment trying to date Lois, this is written by a guy who has like a nerdy history in high school. I can see the bullies around Yang making his life difficult, right? And it's sort of,
he actually talks about that in the afterword too.
Yeah, right. And so I think like when a nerd looks back on childhood, I don't even know how to put it into words. It's sort of like there's a nerd vision that they have for things. I'll probably just have to point to the specific panels where my nerd vision activated. But although a talented writer, some of the child stuff was a little awkward, and it's an adult trying to imitate what he thinks a kid. Oh, a pooper. That's something a 12-year-old boy calls.
And that was one of the other things I thought was a real downfall of the graphic novel that loses some of the teeth from the radio show, is that there are specific sets of words that Yang is so against, right? Certain slurs and ideas, he has to invent new slurs, and they don't carry any emotional weight to them.
Okay, I wanted to dovetail into that. So the radio play used the term yellow, and it used the C word. I don't want to get you banned off YouTube, but it used the C word, right? The kids mention that Chuck said something mean, but the kids don't repeat what Chuck said. So it's sort of like the kids have this sort of like, they understand you're not supposed to use that language. The bad guys use the hard slurs in their evil bad guy meetings. But even the bad guys in here don't talk like bad guys. Right. So I'm assuming Ching Chong is okay for you too. So the bad guys use Ching Chong and like the kids use Ching Chong, right? So it's sort of like everything's flattened. The normal kids being racist to each other is parallel with the evil bad guys and the terms they use.
And that's one of the aspects too in the that I think this did somewhat. They used Chuck, which is the kid who. Okay, so part of the plot of the story is that Tommy's moved into the neighborhood and he's a great pitcher, and he's never been on a team before, but he's just played pickup ball and he's a great pitcher. And the local hero, Chuck Riggs, who had been the Unity House pitcher, well, he's not as good, so he got second string. And so Chuck is mad, and so Chuck, he acts out like a kid who's. I mean, he's a single. He's from a single parent household. His father's dead. His mom's widowed. They're living with their uncle, who's a crazy racist. And so that's part of it. He's acting out, and I think the
he's even crazier in the radio show.
Yeah, well, definitely. But Chuck in the radio show has got a really good heart. Chuck in the book is conflicted, except for his love of Superman. He loves Superman more than anything.
I would say he's pretty. I would say he's actually much worse in the comic version.
Yeah.
In the radio show, he's again, because racism is an aberration. Mm-hmm. It's something that's like, it's almost like a sickness that he has. It's almost like a cold that he has. And once he's shown the better way, he's pretty uncomfortable with a lot of that stuff pretty early on. And this version of Chuck buys into the racism far more than he does in the radio program.
Also, right. But I mean, once it comes up to real harm,
right.
And once he's seen Superman stand up against it, and he turns around. And I think Yang did a really good job of building the relationship where Chuck and Tommy, it's authentic how like Chuck's turn, like, and he's like, man, I can't believe I was, I hurt people. And I think it's fairly authentic the way it shows.
So I want to speak to Chuck's character, Radio Chuck and Book Chuck. So Radio Chuck, everything in the radio show is simpler. Everything in the radio show is more 6-year-old oriented, right? So Radio Chuck finds out that his uncle's a bad criminal and he knows what the right thing to do is, but he's scared to do the right thing because his uncle could hurt him, right? So the moral message of the radio show could be dumbed down to, hey kids, if you find out your uncle's in the Ku Klux Klan, tell a police officer, because that's what Superman would do. Book Chuck is worried, doesn't know if his family is racist. And something I'll praise Yang for doing is I really appreciated what he did with Uncle Riggs' character, where there's this great scene where Uncle Riggs tells Chuck, you being that kid, you're going to go there and apologize tomorrow. And then when he finds out, he even didn't when he at first thought, oh, is the kid's name Kowalski or something? So he doesn't even like white immigrants, right? So it's like Yang is actually trying to make an effort to characterize a Ku Klux Klan member realistically. And then when he finds out the kid,
he names it's a Polish name, an Irish name, and then he mentions Jews. So
right. So, Book Uncle is a father figure to Chuck, creating Chuck's moral dilemma. He's got the father figure of his uncle, who's his surrogate father figure, versus the father figure of Superman, who he idolizes, and this is torturing him. I really liked that angle because this is Yang actually doing some work and saying, how do I get into the mindset of this kind of character? Later, he uses like some more like 21st century racist language and ideas, which is, I think, Yang trying to take the 40s story and bring it into a 21st century discussion. But I appreciate that aspect of it. But then Chuck does dumb things like goes to the house and tries to trick the kids out of the house rather than calling the police and telling them there's a bomb threat. Like, and not just
they have to make Chuck like way worse than he was in the radio program. The radio program, once he kind of makes his decision, that's the turning point.
Yep. Now he's a good guy. Yeah.
And he's a good kid at heart. He's made some mistakes here. Like I said, they have to make him make some dumb decisions. And even at the end of the story, although he sides with Tommy, the previous interchange between him and Tommy is still like, yeah, you're still racist. It's like, and that's the thing is like it's the
I want to see that again. Yeah, there is a good scene. Okay, because I'm so mad at
that brings up that's one of the things that I have a problem with the story, right? So in the radio drama, right, there's very explicitly Clark, Perry, and Jimmy Olsen all take time to talk about how this sort of racism, this sort of group identity is anti-American, because our founding documents stipulate that all men are created equal, and we haven't always been good about that, but we need to be better about it because that's the point of the country. So, you know, and the creed of the Clan of the Fiery Cross is one color, one religion, one nation, right?
Yeah, one race, one religion.
One
there is a third one. Yeah.
But anyway, and so that's the thing is that the whole point about in the radio drama, these three characters are all like, no, you know, and one of the things is when Clark and Jimmy go to talk to Tommy's dad, they're packing up, they're getting out of there. The Klan put a flaming cross in their yard, and they're like, that's it, we're out of here, we're heading back out of here, we can't do it. And then they're like, no, you belong here, you've earned us. I mean, you guys have worked hard, you've moved out to this place, you belong with us, right? You belong with your neighbors, with your home. It's your place. And in the graphic novel, they never have that on the nose. Let's say maybe it's a little on the nose, but it's so foundational to why this is unacceptable behavior that I feel that you miss out on it.
Well, I mean, okay, so tell me what you think about this pushback. So the impression I get from the 40s radio drama, from how Yang contextualizes it in the back notes of the comic, is that they're dealing with a real and present danger, and they have to write. And I mean this. I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, but they have to write aspirational propaganda to scare kids. So oh, you mean the Klan? What are those bigots doing here? They have to say that every 10 minutes, every 10 seconds.
I think it's perfectly fair to describe the radio play as a work of propaganda. We have this problem where propaganda has two connotations. Where
it was created as propaganda. Yeah, there's no mistake.
It's
very obviously crafted.
And it has to be black and white in that moral sense in order to achieve that.
And it's incredibly enjoyable. The radio drama is enjoyable propaganda. It's a hoot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's actually refreshing, and it's really interesting how modern it sounds in a way. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like, oh wow, like I can hear that. Those same arguments I do hear today.
I call it classically liberal. It's like that radio drama is the classical liberal view on how to deal with racism.
Well, and it's Americanly nationalistic, right? It's saying if you're going to be part of this country, if you're going to be part of this experiment, these are the credos you have to abide by, and one of those is all men are created equal. And if you're not ready to sign on that line, get out of here.
But
the implicit, the thing behind which I'm sure we'll get to is it's it's almost like it's so obvious they don't need to say it even in aspirational propaganda that it's I suppose they're just assuming it's a Christian nation. Which is why you can go to a different denominational church and still be.
And in the radio play, there are a couple places where they actually specify, even if you're not, a Christian.
I missed. Okay, well then there you go.
Terry White
that's right.
Mentions even if you're
There's
not
many
in religion,
religions.
that's your business. That's not ours.
That's true.
Sort of, but
this comic, I just bring that up because this comic is not aspirational. It's not Well, I don't know. Maybe some DC editors think otherwise, but I don't think with Orange Man bad as bad as Orange and as bad as Orange Man bad was, I don't get the impression that they're trying to frantically squash an immediate danger. They want to have a contemplative kind of a calmer kind of self-reflective young adult conversation about something, and so everything gets a little more muddled when that happens, because he's just gonna kind of somberly walk through some topics, and he doesn't feel compelled to resolve them all, because it's not the intent of the story. What do you think?
Okay, so I think you're right, because he doesn't have to solve every problem. But I think that one of the reasons why he can't solve certain things is because of how conflicted Yang is in his identity, because that's all of his storytelling.
Wow.
So the story that Rhys just told of America, which is we're all kind of, together in this experiment and we're all signing on to this creed. That idea is specifically called out by Matt Riggs, who's our Grand Scorpion in the Purple Hood here, and
in the climax. Yep.
In the climax, and Superman has no good answer for it.
And
his answer is let me finish. Let me just finish my thought here.
He has an answer
before I lose it. But his answer is weak and anemic. Because in the radio show, there's just a bunch of assumptions about what American is. And so the Chinese American is just as American as the American American, because we're all just assuming that we're all just going out and playing baseball. And I'm going to appeal to the kid's sense of honor and fair play. And that's why the whole story is, I think, partially based around a baseball story, because baseball was the great American pastime. And here's the Chinese kid playing it. And here's our other New York characters playing it. They all sound the same. The only thing that looks different is the color of their skin and where they go to church, essentially. And Yang is coming to this completely divorced from that idea. And so the best thing that he can come up with is this pretty terrible, weak tagline of we all share a tomorrow,
the same tomorrow,
which means nothing, and it doesn't bind all of these cultures together. It doesn't unify anyone. And here's the crux of what I want to say here. The radio show, again, is completely opposite in worldview to Yang. The radio show is about what binds us all together. And Yang is very interested in what makes him specifically different than his neighbors. And that is a key point of difference between the worldviews of these stories. The radio show is like, we're all basically the same. We're all melting pot. And Yang cannot accept that. I'm not saying he should. I'm just saying, but that is what leads to the story having the being what it is. Because Superman, just like baseball, is basically another great old American pastime that kind of unifies everyone together in this kind of, American flag tradition thing. And Yang has problems working his head around that.
So maybe the question is, what does Yang have to say as an individual versus what would a progressive have to say? And I'm just going to assume that the problem is I'm trying to judge Yang from afar, right? But kind of like after reading this book, I've basically concluded I think Yang accepts the progressive theory of race and internalized, whiteness and that stuff, right?
I think that's part of it, but I don't think it's a full acceptance, right? And here's part of it, going back to that, because here's the thing about sharing tomorrow. I do agree that that's weak, because it doesn't build it doesn't build on the premises of all men are created equal. And I think that that second paragraph in the Declaration of Independence is the most sublime statement of political philosophy that human beings have ever put together. I think that.
But Rhys, who made them equal?
God. That's what I said.
And that is never mentioned. That's mentioned in the radio play, or it's assumed in the radio play. I'd say it's not assumed here, which I think.
Yang does
so interesting.
Yang does bring in. I've never seen the idea that Superman's parents are Christians referenced in a comic, which is it's one of those things that just.
I'm pretty sure I have.
Okay, and maybe they have been, because I haven't read every Superman story, but it feels like that's something that's kind of odd. What do you think? Superman's parents living in Kansas in the 1920s, because of course they're Christian.
I think it's canonical that they were Methodist, which I thought was funny because they mentioned Lutheran Church here.
Yeah, that was funny.
So
I think they're canonically Methodist.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So Yang is again, and things like the priest, the rabbi, and the reverend were not in. I don't think they were in the
which is the setup for a walk into a bar joke.
Right.
Yeah, that was weird. That was very weird.
Yang is again doing his thing where he feels like he has to reference his faith and his religion, but and there are even great little moments like, Superman's mom quoting, "Woe to them that call evil good and good evil." It's like, I need to have this in the book somewhere because it's my faith and it's important to me, but it never gets brought out. I thought that what Yang was going to do was, I thought he was going to talk about how the historical Ku Klux Klan was rabidly anti-Catholic, right? Like, how could something that delicious not have
so interesting? That'd be so interesting. Yeah.
Well, and so this goes back to I want to get into the real Ku Klux Klan in a little bit, but before then, one of the things that we were talking about, you all were talking about in the chat.
I don't want to get into the real Ku Klux Klan. I don't know what you're talking about.
So, but you do know what I'm talking about. But before we start talking about that, in the chat in our DM group, you guys were talking about there was who shared that link? There was a
Leviticus
shot of the Lutheran Church.
Yeah, that was Matt. That was Matt.
Yeah. Let's talk about that before we talk about, because I think that's a better take on where we're at with looking at the faith basis.
This is what we're all kind of circling, is how does America reconcile itself with Israel, I guess. And there's been various takes on that over the centuries.
And
various errors.
Matt, what page was that on?
Oh gosh. I mean, it was issue 3. I know it is that.
Chapter 3. Okay, so
the confrontation between Uncle Riggs and Matt Riggs and the what is it? The Grand Poobah, whatever.
It's just before he finds out the Fortress of Solitude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
So just after when Riggs is first arrested, which I gotta say, like the setup and the length. So one funny thing in the book is they talk about is evil Uncle Matt is talking about how and my wife had no shortage of giving me crap over that, by the way. But evil Uncle Matt,
I just got that. I'm so slow.
So evil Uncle Matt in the book calls everything they do a ritual. And that is one of the things I thought that they did a fun job of poking fun at the Klan over, because like, we're gonna give one of our most sacred rituals and tar and feather you. And in the radio play they don't use that device, but they do talk about tar and feathering a lot, and it's a big plot point.
Oh yeah, it's like
they end up all kinds of problems because they don't get enough.
They don't have enough tar. They're like, oh, our tar.
The tar falls. Don't they lose their tar?
Yeah, somebody knocks it, and it's like not even a story point. Somebody comes in like
washes away.
Higgins knocked it off the mountain. It's falling.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll go back into town to get some more tar.
We need some more tar.
Just wait. It's not even happening on screen. Yeah. Okay. So here it is.
Because Jimmy Olsen and Perry White are much more central characters in the story as well.
Yeah.
And so they get a reprieve because there's not enough tar to tar and feather them. So I might be able. Let me zoom in a bit.
I'm gonna give it a cinematic layout. Ooh, hey, there we go. Look at that. So we're just gonna be off screen. You guys will have to just not see our faces. But there you have it.
Well, hold on.
Not too far. Where'd it go?
Sorry.
Where'd it go?
Okay, give me 1 second. I gotta find it again.
You can screen cap and then just zoom into the screen cap.
You want to find the Leviticus quote, right? Because we have it in our DMs too.
Yeah. Was it like 18 something?
I was just trying to zoom into the screen. Every time I did it, like threw off which page I was on. I think this will be good enough.
Because you knew when that was there that there has to be
Leviticus 19:34. Yeah.
There we go.
All right, I got it.
Okay, here. Hang on, I'm on the wrong thing of me. Okay, so the Smallville Lutheran Church, Superman's racing by, going to go see his parents, and right there at the bottom this week, Leviticus 14:39, and Matt grabbed a screenshot of that verse. We're going to go ahead and share that here. I should have had that ready to go. This is how together we are, people.
We're a professional outfit.
Absolutely. So Matt, you want to do us the honors there?
Yeah. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God.
Right. Good.
The assumption being, though, that those foreigners would worship the one true God.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things about this is that this is a part in Levitical statute where we're talking about what is the weight of the law. I'm gonna go ahead and exit full screen layout. Yeah, what is the weight of the legal structure? How are you to legally deal with these people? So the same laws about property values and ownership and all that kind of stuff is supposed to be consistent, whether somebody is a member of the nation or simply residing amongst them, right?
Yeah, sojourner.
Sojourner, right? Exactly. And so that's one of the aspects in that, and I think it's legitimate when you're looking at legal responsibility.
It is.
And certainly you have that on there too. But the question is what constitutes somebody living amongst you?
Well,
that's a whole different question.
Let me actually just say that even without getting into that, let's also mention, because again, this people love to cherry pick the Bible to basically say the Bible supports my standpoint and ignore larger contexts. So let's take a look at the other verses in the Bible. And it's not until I think the New Testament where we get a lot more acceptance towards people who were not Jewish.
That's not entirely true, though.
Well, let me back this up with a couple of things. So explicitly, they were supposed to show love to people who were sojourners. A sojourner meant that you weren't permanently residing. So there's explicitly it's about sojourners among you, people who would maybe nomadically kind of go through your land. You could not become a member of Israel, whether it's Israel or when it's split into the two kingdoms, unless you fully converted, like Ruth fully converts. Right. Most of the time, even things like intermarriage were explicitly forbidden. Do not go and intermarry with a bunch of foreign people
who worship foreign gods. There's a corruption of idolatry. That's
right. Right.
Well, and absolutely. I mean, I would agree that we're looking at who gets to stay or people that are not.
So I'm not again, like I said, and Israel was very well known for having kings and citizens and people who could come to the tabernacle who were not either fully converted or it's
the God-fearers.
Yeah, so that verse was extremely cherry picked and ignores a lot of uncomfortable cultural context, which I don't need to go into and judge it one way or another. It's like in the New Testament, we started getting Jesus who would explicitly reach out to people from other backgrounds, or the great the vision of Peter of all the animals, the take and eat image, which kind of shows a much more integrationist approach of other peoples. Some of what Paul said. But in the Old Testament, there was a lot of no to integration with other foreign cultures. And whenever Israel did it, they were punished for it.
Right. But here's part of the situation though, right? So because what we have in Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy are some of them are religious laws, but all of them are national laws for a specific government, the Israeli Tribal Republic. Okay. And so those are things that if you want to be a member of the Israeli Tribal Republic, these are the things you have to do. And that includes the religion and also the civic side of it. So when you have a situation where that the entire land wasn't conquered, right? Because that's a real fact. It wasn't all conquered. Joshua said, "I'm old. I'm retiring. Don't quit going," and everybody quit. So there were consequences. The whole book of Judges are people going in that. But one of the things that's set up in that rule is that people can integrate to you, don't integrate to them, right? So it's a one-way street. If people want to come into the nation, then they have to. Here are the rules, and here are the ways about a foreigner becoming a national, and all the kind of stuff. But don't become part of them. So it's a one-way street, and I would argue that that's a really good policy for any nation.
I would still say that even though like there were like ways you could, and it did happen. Like I said, biblically we have the character of Ruth and other
Rahab the harlot.
Rahab, yeah. So there are some explicit examples. There's a implicit kind of frowning on intermarrying with other cultures too much, just because of how often it would lead to the religious straying.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was the thing is, like,
ethnicity.
Solomon was specifically not to be accumulating wives anyway. One and two, his heart was with his wives, not with his God, and that was one of those aspects of it. So,
and his wives again from other.
Those aren't people. Those aren't people that are coming in. Those are people that are coming in and changing. Those are people that are changing from the inside out. So it's that same thing. Don't integrate to those people, but if they're integrating to you, and you do have what's his name? Okay, David killed him, stole his wife.
Oh God!
Oh, Uriah the Hittite.
Yeah.
Uriah the Hittite.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of David's mighty men. He had become an Israeli. He was all that kind of stuff. And he changed. He was following the whole thing. We didn't get him to be one of the mighty men without that. But at the same time, David did dirty by him. But
I don't know if this is a woke interpretation I picked up or not. But I've also heard somewhere that Moses marrying Zipporah was not with the Jews in Egypt. Therefore, he's marrying some woman outside of the tribe of Israel, unless the Jews have like cousins wandering the desert.
They were cousins. They were from one of Abraham's other sons.
There is that entire tribe that got really scared of the colonization of Israel. What was the name of that tribe? And they trick Israel into protecting them.
Yeah, that's in Kings. Yeah.
And they get no, I think it's in
Chronicles.
It's in Joshua.
It's earlier. It's Joshua. Because I
can't remember G something.
It's Gibeonites. It might be Gibeonites.
Yep.
Yeah. And so they were about to get like their city eradicated, and they basically trick the Israelites into protecting them, and then like make them swear an oath. And Joshua basically says, "Okay, well, you're going to be our water carriers forever," which is basically you're going to be our. I wouldn't call it slaves, but just shy of it.
Well, we're not going to murder you and take all your stuff like is normal in ancient warfare during this time period.
But the Gibeonites were forbidden from owning property unless they became Israelis. They couldn't intermarry unless they had that. I mean, like there was a whole bunch of lists, and it was basically like you have to abide by our law even if you don't believe in our God. So
Rhys, that's a great example of how these racial issues were very much more complex and messy.
Yes.
And Yang's version of just slapping up one verse is ignorant of everything we've just talked about in derailing this conversation into the Old Testament.
I want to make my closing. I guess what might be my closing thought on the relationship of Christianity to this overarching topic. You can make an excellent internal argument within Christianity for why racism is bad. I think you can make an excellent argument for why interracial marriage is okay for Christians from a biblical perspective. In a post-Christian culture, you now have this problem of if you can't say the reason to not be racist is because Jesus says don't be racist. What is the big answer you stuff in there when you tell people why they shouldn't be racist? And in some ways, that failure of Superman to say something to Matt Rhys, I think it's like there's a Jesus-shaped
Riggs.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Riggs. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a Freudian slip there. All right, so that's like a Jesus-shaped hole where Superman. There was probably no way for him to get away with this, but I kind of wanted Jesus to have Superman say, "Hey, Ku Klux Klan member, you shouldn't be racist because Jesus says it is." Right? Yeah. I even felt like Yang might have been building up to that with the Christian symbolism earlier in the book, but he doesn't have that. He has a rhetorical, sweet-sounding phrase to a legitimately troubling question from the it's almost like it's exactly the same problem I have with Zootopia. Is Zootopia and Superman Smashes the Klan are theoretically supposed to be anti-racist books, but they both of them kind of accidentally have
mega racist.
Oh yeah, exactly. They're supposed to be anti-racist. They're the most racist things ever. Yeah. Zootopia has a super racist message in it.
Yeah. Don't get me started on the ewes, the female sheep of the story.
All right, so one thing I do have to say is that I don't know if this was. I'm sure this is unintentional, but I hate to say it, but Christian imagery got partially because we're dealing with the Klan, but Great Scott, our most recognizable symbol of hate.
Oh yeah. Oops, that must have been an accident. I don't believe you.
Yeah, I didn't feel that as a
yeah.
I think it's inadvertent, but I have to admit that most of the big cross symbols that we see in this, because eventually the Daily Planet, which did not happen in the radio show, exactly. This did not happen in the radio show, but in the comic, they actually get a flaming cross on the Daily Planet globe. So all the cross imagery that we have is blazing hatred. And Yang doesn't really offer as much of a counterpoint to that, specifically from the Christian standpoint, apart from like the church with the Leviticus thing.
Well, and I think part of that is the difficulty of working in a DC comic that is, where at this point they can't explicitly say anything about faith that isn't derogatory.
I think he's bumping up against. I think he pushes the envelope more than other writers in mainstream comics because the envelope is so closed.
We're in the middle of this postmodern synthesis.
Like he can show a young Clark Kent as a Samson figure, and I don't think most writers would think to do that or would be even comfortable.
That was good stuff.
Doing that.
That was good stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And contrasting his mom with like the kooky. Well, even that, so it's like, okay. I feel like all superhero stories have to be the most normie centrist trash ever. And that's when they're at their best, right? So you always do the thing where you have the mean Christian and then you have the nice Christian, right? And that's how you get away with doing it in like a normie centrist book. So he did the normie centrist thing. He had the mean Christian parents, his mom's the nice Christian mom, and this is all the setup for Superman having like his we haven't even talked much about Superman's whole angle on this story, but Superman has his own whole weird journey that's supposed to parallel.
He's got foreigner eyes,
right?
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So this is almost getting back into like the good stuff, the good Superman stuff. I like I like the good Superman stuff of Superman going to the circus and seeing the flying Graysons. That if you compare Yang to 99.9% of modern superhero comics utter trash, then of course he's going to be head and shoulders above that giant heaping dumpster fire. It's almost like because I like Yang and I really respect Yang, I'm kind of looking for a higher standard of nailing your themes and nailing your plot, right? And so because he's not hitting that, it's like, yes, way better than a whole lot of crap. Yes, more daring, willing to talk about these things. But when you get to the point where you're going to write a Superman story and he's a character for 6-year-olds, I think any pretentious person who thinks they should be writing Superman stories for 30-year-olds should be immediately thrown out of the building. We are writing Superman stories for 6-year-olds. By that point, you have to have worked through your racial identity problems and your thoughts about the problem of racism enough that you can communicate a substantive, practical message to 6-year-olds. Can you say anything substantive, practical about racism in 21st century America where racial issues seem to have reignited in our time? I don't know. I feel like there was more Yang could have said as a Christian on that topic if he had brought that textually into the story rather than leaving it as this subtextual thing we're trying to guess at.
So
Well,
yeah,
see, and that comes back to part of my problem with it, especially compared to the radio play, was that because like the radio play doesn't lean on the religious aspect, other than saying that all churches, all religions are welcome. It leans on the axiomatic faith, the concept of the American construct, right? Is that all men are created equal, that we're endowed by the Creator with certain rights, and you can't just walk around taking those away from people. You can't hurt people. You can't endanger people. You can't make people feel unsafe. You have to let people be secure in their homes, because that's what American is. And if you don't buy into that, then you're not an American. and they're so the radio show is so on the nose with that. Yeah. That I think that because that it still gets that message across in a way that Yang won't touch, for whatever reason, he won't touch the American way aspect in the story. And so he really wants truth and justice in there, but he won't anchor that to the American way, and it loses something because the only people that are not the only people, but the people that are mostly talking about real Americans are the Clan of the Fiery Cross. Yep. Where in the radio play, everybody's talking about real Americans, and he's like, and the people that back it up with history, the people that back it up with some sort of argument, some sort of evidence, are Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Clark Kent. They said, because they're saying these are the foundations of this country, and then even at one point, Matt Riggs says, at one point, what's the kid's name?
Chuck Riggs is the kid.
Chuck says, but I've been thinking about this, and we're talking about this, and the Constitution protects their rights. And Matt Riggs says, "Bah, the Constitution. That's how you know it's a bad thing." It's like, the guy is pissing on the Constitution.
He does that early on, and later I remember there was something about all the Indians were red, and they were just as American as us white Americans, right?
Oh, I'm not talking about the Indians, and he pushes it away. But that's the thing is, so there is a leg to stand on in the radio play, even though they're not being explicit about religious terms. They're still dealing with this concept of we axiomatically accept the universal value of human beings as a foundational premises of our culture. And if you believe in the universal value of human beings, then you share something with our culture. That is not said in the graphic novel, and I believe it suffers for it greatly.
Do you think, is that something? This isn't a tangent question. This is just, it's probably has a simple answer. But talking with people who are not from America, I get this impression that American exceptionalism is reviled because they're assuming we're coming from a perspective that more closely represents theirs, where they have a constitution that just pick a country, pick Mexico, pick Spain, pick Zimbabwe. Like there's going to be no appeal to a universal human identity in a universally equal human equal in value.
In a lot of constitutions, it explicitly or explicitly or implicitly requires a non-equality.
This is the Constitution for us. It's not for you, it's for us. And interestingly, and once again, this is another interesting story, well written in its way, where Yang seems never interested in the fact that his ancestry is coming from a culture that would not value this the principles that he wants to see. I think he wants to see America aspire to, either a secular America or a Christian America. Either way, there's no multiculturalism
on Krypton.
That's interesting.
Very fair point. Depending on who's writing Krypton, they could be pretty ridiculous.
Like all that to say. So, like, do you think that? I just think that's an interesting point. That when we talk about how much we like America, we're not saying that we like our race. more than your race.
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah,
which that could sound, it could mean that if you're just talking about how much you love
right.
you
And that's
know,
one of the things
country
that,
X,
once again,
but
in
we're
the
saying
radio,
we love people, and that's like our country is just founded on people.
Mhm.
God having created them. So you can have this too, you know, and I guess that's what the American way is. So
Yep, and that's one of the things that the radio play hits is that, like,
Yeah.
you know, that
pretty clearly.
if you believe in this construct, then you're one of us. We
Yeah.
and we love our people. It doesn't
And that's
matter
unique.
what you look like,
Yeah.
because you're one of us if you agree that you're one of us. If you belong here, if you want to belong here, and here is, you know, truth, justice, the American way. And if you're gonna uphold truth, justice, the American way, then you're already here. So this is one of the things I want to, total side note, but one of the things that I believe so strongly in, right? Like, I was born in this country, and there are millions. I honestly believe there are millions of Americans out there in the world that were just happen to be born somewhere else. They haven't been able to get here yet, and they're as true Americans as I am, because they believe in the same stuff, right? and maybe they're saving up their pennies, and they're going to get here. And there are people that are born here that don't belong because they refuse to acknowledge that if truth, justice, and the American way, you know, that's the thing is.
So the thing that is that, according to the end of this comic, I don't know if Yang believes in the same vision of America that you're discussing there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of implying that a chunk of those assumptions are in fact racially based and therefore are racist. The assumption that we're all American is basically according to I think some of what unfortunately what I think Yang may be buying into here. That the kind of a worldview that we often see on the far left, that basically says that the idea of the American way and the fact that we're bound together by these ideas is in fact a white thing. And again, Yang is basically saying, well, I'm kind of different than that. And so again, when he has the moment to basically have Superman say what Rhys has been kind of saying, and what the radio play had Superman basically say and Perry White say, all Yang can basically muster is this quote here: "We're all bound together by the future. We all share the same tomorrow," which means nothing, because there is no real binding force other than this very vague idea that Yang can't even describe.
Well, and the thing is it's in this, and I disagree with you, because it is something. It's will, right? It's like we have a different past, but we together share the future, because we build the future as we go day by day. That's all right.
So I need to hop in. I need to hop in.
Okay.
Put me in, coach.
Okay. Did you finish your point, Rhys? Though.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. The reason this interaction is where the whole comic book fell apart for me. The panel before this, he has Uncle Riggs referencing.
I'll pull it up. Give me a second.
Yeah, he has him referencing replacement theory. So this is Yang alluding to 4chan alt-right talking points, right? It must be conscious, yeah. And replacement theory has even been discussed in relation to comic books. Why are all the ginger waifus being changed into black waifus?
Right,
that's weird, right? So Yang is referencing a contemporary 21st century talking point from like 4chan. I even kind of want to read it because I want to get it right. Okay, you've been brainwashed by corrupt newspapers, textbook Superman. So like fake news. The Lees aren't your own. You share no blood with them, no history. There's literally nothing that binds you together. That has been the Klan's point all along. A nation bound by nothing cannot last. So he is giving Chuck a coherent evil argument for why he has.
This is evil Uncle Matt.
I'm sorry, this Uncle Matt.
evil Uncle Matt.
The Scorpion. I'm going to call him the Scorpion.
Get our names right.
Okay, I'm going to call him the Scorpion so I don't mix him up with Matt Rhys. So the Grand Scorpion has a coherent. It's like Satan. Satan gives people coherent, sensible arguments to get them to do evil things.
And this is arguably the best point raised by these racists in the entire book. Beforehand, you get the radio program. They're pretty. they're cartoonish and how evil they are, and they're pretty cartoonish here too. But this is the
it is more
Yang,
complex here. Yeah,
Yang is at least trying to say this is what they say and representing it more accurately than a lot of other people are willing to do so.
And in some ways, the subplots of this book have illustrated the Grand Scorpion's point. The girl Roberta has a hard time fitting in with white people. She feels like she would have been happier in Chinatown. And Chuck was asking the question, well, wouldn't people be happier if they just lived with their own kind? So the direction I kept thinking he must be going is he's going to have Roberta recognize that she can have a racial identity that parallels the Klan's. And so she needs to learn to love the white people she's having trouble with, and he doesn't go that direction. Instead, we get this statement of an alt-right internet racism put into the mouth of a 40s Ku Klux Klan character. So when the Superman speech gets more annoying, when you see that this is essentially, the reason I call this a satanic argument is it's a satanic argument because it has resonance. What are we united by? You know, when cities are burning down, we don't feel very unified. And a hoorah American, even if it was kind of like a good old 1940s hoorah American point, even that would kind of ring hollow here. This is why I call this a Jesus-shaped hole, is if you don't have, if we're evolved monkeys, right, and monkeys evolve in different countries to do different things, then you could actually make an argument, a scientific racist argument, that we really have evolved to be different from one another. Right. If you have a biblical framework, you say we're all created the image of God. I think that would be a unifying point, whether it's, you know, like the Ken Ham young Earth creationists or the old Earth creationists, whatever you are, we all basically agree on this central point that you're creating.
And I mean, even the theistic evolution guys, you know, they would even hold the idea that, no, God using evolution still creates us equal. I think that's the Imago Dei is not absent from that worldview just because it's not special creation.
Right. So
even though I think it's a little silly, I still want to give props to them for that point.
So I basically got off my chest why this whole interaction frustrated me.
Right.
But
that comes back to my point, right? Is that, and I think this is an important one. It's something we don't talk about in any of our circles often enough, right? Superman's answer is we're together because we will it, right? The force of will, the force of, and that's an important thing that I don't think people. I mean, because that's like when you talk about, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, about harnessing equal opportunity. Those all are acts of will. So I think that strikes against the victim narrative, because a full victim narrative says, no, you can't, no matter how hard you try. And this is saying, no, we can, because we will make it happen. And I think that is something that
I think you're.
And Roberta does do that in a way. She does. Go,
she defines her place in the community, and it's
with a couple white girls. She says, like, maybe we won't be best friends, but we'll be sort of friends, which felt a little racially strange.
And also, the last page,
a little hollow. I'm not gonna. I'm sorry. It still rings a bit hollow.
Yeah, but he was landing the plane there. He just kind of
lands it a little bit. He lands it a little. Like I'm not gonna. I mean, I can't lie. He
kissed the tarmac. With
he did. But the end state of the story, and I think it's very important to take stock. Okay, because he does land the narrative a bit, but the end state of the story is the majority of America is still basically racist, and you all need to do better. And it's like, and that is not what the radio play showed. The radio play was basically Klan is an aberration and they're crooks. Get rid of them. You're all the radio play basically says you're already better than this. Don't go down that road. Essentially, it's like don't do drugs. Don't let friends go dress up in white hoods. And a lot of the radio play was kind of meant to kind of, I think, even socially push people in that direction. Yang's universe is different than that. Yang's universe is basically, you're all racist, and I can't really be best friends with you because the girl she goes to be friends with at the end has been just like microaggressioning her the entire comic, and And at the end of the comic, that's not resolved. It's basically like, well, I could be like, we could maybe be friends, but you are still kind of racist. And Chuck's mother is still technically racist, and Chuck is still kind of a little racist. And like the majority of the characters in this comic are still, they're a little racist. They're just not Klan racist. We've moved past that. We've gotten rid of them. But Yang's end state of the story is really kind of like I said, it's kind of ugly. I'm afraid to say, and it doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth. Whereas the radio program ends on a much better note.
When the Klan is
defeated, not the end of the story, Twitless. That's not the end of the story. The end of the story is that the epilogue there at the Daily Planet, where La Shin gets validated and also gets to build a hope for herself strong people that really value her, and even if the stupid friends she's with don't value her. You know, these the other people. There are people that do.
She's going to go out and be a cute, and I actually like the angle of like there being like a cute little mini Lois Lane.
Yes, right there. That's the actual end of the story.
All right. So,
but this actually is a. What were you going to say, Marm? Because I've got a great segue to my next big.
All right. So, I want to get back to microaggression and hidden images of racism as a theme woven throughout this book. I feel like
because oh boy,
okay, so rhetorically, if in the old radio show the Klan is the big point, in this sometimes the Klan is actually kind of treated. It goes back and forth. Sometimes they're a serious threat and we gotta be scared of them, and sometimes they're just a bunch of clowns. They're bigots in bed sheets. Ha ha ha! They're such goofballs, right? So the progressive woke lens is yes, the Klan is evil, but you white conservative Americans, when you talk about how the Klan is gone, what you're missing is that hidden institutional racism is with us still. And actually fixating on things like a Klan is a distraction from the real problem we've got to talk about, which is the microaggression angle, which is so consistently woven throughout this narrative in Superman and Roberta's narrative. It's obviously, it's sort of like it was made as a way to teach a young person to look for microaggressions and to get people our age to look for the microaggressions, pull them out and say, okay, here's why this is a microaggression. Here's what the white person is assuming. The reason I'm just overall frustrated with it is I feel like that story has been told. And if you're Yang and you're going to be brave enough to flesh out your Ku Klux Klan members to the point that the Ku Klux Klan members get to make Ku Klux Klan arguments in the book, you've got to recognize the limitations of the progressive worldview, or else you don't have moral credibility to talk about the evils of white racism, right?
Okay.
You've got to talk about how that works universally, and how it could apply to a white person as well as to any other minority. Or else it's just left there as an open, empty, hanging question. That's it.
And so here's part of why I want to get into the historical aspect of it, because I know there's tons of little microaggression stuff, but I think that misses the point, right? I mean, it's in the book, but the reason that that's a thing is and the reason I think people are getting tricked into it is because our current culture is unwilling to call out the actual bad guys of history, right? Which is the Democrat Party. Because that's the thing is, you look at Yang's little thing in the back, right? And he's talking about, the Klan was formed after the 15th Amendment, and it was there, and all black people and their allies were hunted down. Yeah,
something about Woodrow Wilson and
their allies were Republicans, right? Their
Yeah.
allies were Republicans that were being hunted down during Reconstruction and after, right? And the Ku Klux Klan stopped because of the huge migration of people of Africans into the northern industrial centers, and they took their Republican votes with them, and so that the Democrats were able to take back over the state houses in the South, and impose Jim Crow laws, and there wasn't enough of a Republican voting bloc to offset that, and that was a factor in there. And then Woodrow Wilson, he name drops Woodrow Wilson, and that's great. But in Chuck Riggs' speech, Matt Riggs' speech, where he's talking about that your mind has been corrupted by textbooks and things. Woodrow Wilson wrote the textbooks. They were pro-Democrat, pro slavery, pro segregation textbooks that were being proffered, that were and Birth of a Nation was based on Woodrow Wilson's treatment of American history, where he extricated every black person of any value except for a few key ones that he couldn't ignore, like Frederick Douglass.
I really appreciated Yang dropping the Wilson bomb on.
Yeah,
Yang.
except
the
the
W
thing is,
bomb.
that's the thing I'm talking about. He drops it, but then he doesn't.
He does leave out. Yeah, you're right. He does
leaves
kind of.
out,
He does leave
these
out.
are specific 100-year-long battles that were by and large the Republican Party was trying to roll back Jim Crow and didn't have the votes to.
So I do want to
100 years.
I want to address something. James Hay brings up a pretty good question. Then is the comic is this comic a rejection of the cultural melting pot theorem we once considered America in favor of a morass of segregated tribes based on racial lines because we supposedly suck too much to be better? My answer to that is by the end state of the book, even with the positive spin that we have with Roberta joining being a Cub reporter, I would say that I think that according to Yang, I think it's like an open question with that has not been answered.
Yang doesn't know what to say about that, right?
Well, yeah, he does kind of say, because like at the epigraph at the end, his essay at the very end, he basically kind of says his position, which is basically. I'm
going to read that here.
Yeah, I have it pulled up too, but go ahead.
Say, after my father arrived in America and before he met my mom, he was terribly lonely. He lived in a boarding house with other students. One of them was named Dave. Dave had dark brown hair and Clark Kent glasses, and he'd grown up in a town that was driving distance from campus. Dave must have sensed that my father needed a friend. Despite the language barrier, Dave began talking with my father. First one conversation, then another. On holidays, when the house cleared out, Dave invited my father to go with him to his parents' home. Dave's parents and siblings welcomed my father with open arms, and they shared many meals together. I feel a lot less lonesome during the holidays, my father says. I'm grateful for that warm friendship. 50 years have passed. My father and Dave each found wives, raised families, started and ended careers. They are still friends to this day. When I think about what the future ought to be like, I don't think about my junior high classmate with the untied shoes, which is a whole different story, by the way. I think about the friendship with my dad and Dave.
Yeah, I think the message is basically be better. We're not finished yet. Is Yang's ultimate message in this book?
It's Michelle Obama just after her husband got elected.
And some people may buy into that. I don't buy into all of Yang's how he sees things. Like I said, I'm not a big person. I don't. This exchange right here is an interesting point because it shows some of the microaggression stuff. But basically, we have the brunette girl, and she's trying to be nice.
She's never met a Chinese person before.
Yeah, so she just you're new. And she basically brings up a racist point that and counterpoints it. She says, my grandpa used to say that Chinese people are sneaky, but my dad would tell him that they're all actually hardworking and brave, which is a very simple, childish message of saying good things about another group of people when they've been specifically denigrated. So basically, the grandpa had said they're all bad. And the father said, no, I find them to be good people. And Roberta, you can see here, is she's not happy with that. And she actually, in the next panel, interjects and says, well, that's not actually true. Like, some of us are hardworking and brave. And it's like you're still generalizing us. And so she's taking this as a microaggression. But if you actually think about what's happening in this conversation, think about the way she would want it to be phrased, and it still would not satisfy her. And this is the problem with the microaggression thinking, is the fact that everything can still be offensive. Because if you think about it, right? So if grandpa said all Chinese people are sneaky, and then the dad said, well, I think some of them are brave. Do you see how that totally would have been like that would have offended her potentially worse?
And earlier in the story, Tommy says we're not all anything. Tommy actually says that earlier in the story.
Sure,
but then he's embraced by everybody, and he's more interested. I mean, that's one of the dichotomies, is that Tommy is like, well, these are my friends now. We're bros. We just whatever. I'm not going to correct them because we're just hanging out.
Because yeah, so like I said, Tommy's integrationist approach is actually, like I said, the approach that the radio show goes with as being the American way here. But Roberta, who is our POV character, does not buy into that. Even at the end of the story, she's like warmed up to it a little, and I will give Yang credit for having her not reject it. But she's not bought into it. And again, we end up with a sort of like American-born Chinese moment of like not really having an answer to that question. Not a full answer. He's
talking about this specific scene. Maybe like a missed opportunity for Yang is I feel like in children's comics, like one of the questions is, well, what's imitatable behavior for children? This was one of the weird things is I thought, well, you don't want to make an anti-racism book and then teach kids all the great racist slurs they can use, right? So I feel like when Roberta...
Here's the ones that are really offensive.
Right. When Roberta gives pushback, I'm going to try to like imagine how could this be written better? Mm-hmm. The redemptive way to write this, I think, is to have Roberta ask, you don't have to look at me as a good person because I'm Chinese. You can just look at me as a person or as an individual, right? So it's kind of like the classic liberal idea. The content of my character, not the color of my skin. But the microaggression angle, it's sort of like maybe like because Yang wanted to write the microaggression angle, we missed out on Roberta having a sane conversation about the problem. It's like the sweet white girl says something kind of offensive by accident. Oh no, we're not that.
I don't even think this is offensive. That's my problem, is that Yang is basically kind of pointing out that, and to be fair, I will give Yang this much credit. He eventually points out that Roberta's worldview is that she's going too far, I think, with some of her judgments. But he still lets her at the end of the story still kind of have the weight of all of these, and she never like rejects this and embraces integrationists, or she doesn't become Tommy. But like I said, in this exchange, like I said before, when you play it in your head what the brunette could have said, both of them are basically offensive to Roberta. And when you have an option where there is no winning, there's nothing that you can say that's right. I don't think that is a fault of the brunette. I think it's a fault of the person who's taking offense.
That comes back to my point about modern racial theory being unwilling to actually call the bad guys and who they were, right? It's like the whole it comes down, the whole statue argument, tearing down statues of people that were horrible, or people that were allied with horrible people, or people that were next door neighbors to horrible people. Or leave them and talk more context, or actually have conversations about why these statues were put there to begin with. Because we're not willing to do that, we just get the whole topic waved away, and we're not able to actually talk about it. And then the other thing that's frustrating me about that too is you go back to the Woodrow Wilson bomb, and Woodrow Wilson was a freaking Marxist, the same kind of centralist, government control over everything, create the new man, eugenicist kind of stuff, and the same, that the racial grievance politics, the microaggression culture stuff still comes out of that neo-Marxist well, but you can't talk about that because then you're going to alienate your base, or you can't even see it because this is just the soup you live in, right? So the only way to deal with this is the extra based approach, and I don't think that that DC is going to sell that book.
Extra based.
So basically what's going on here, I guess, in our culture and in this comic is that because we've lost, like, institutions are no longer interested in framing the history of America in terms of competing civic visions for what America should be. We just kind of left that, and we adopted competing racial visions, I guess, would be how it is. So, white people were doing this, and then we got them to stop, is kind of the idea now. And if you're going to tell that story, you're going to tell a Superman story inside of that, this is kind of the best you can do, I think.
Like,
But they
Superman
don't
do?
stop. But they don't stop though. Like I said, by the end of the story, like I said, the majority. This is the thing that really I thought was uncomfortable. Because again, opposed to the radio show, where it was a criminal minority that needed to be rounded up and put in jail. That's what Superman says. It got to find the Klan, put him in jail. America will heal, and we can move on. And Chuck can like learn how to be better friends and not use the words he shouldn't use. This story, the majority of the white characters here, they're all still racist by the end of it. There's a couple of people who aren't. I would say Lois, Clark, Perry White, and Jimmy Olsen to an extent. But even Jimmy Olsen is a little racist because he watches the Genghis the Flash. Yeah, and he doesn't have he's not sickened by it. Did you? Yeah. So like all the people who are like passively affirming or approving of this, yellow peril. So even Jimmy gets lumped in a little bit with the kind of microaggression here.
It's the hidden system of racism idea.
Right.
It exists invisibly. You always have to be looking for examples of it. Yeah.
And that's what I don't like about the story, because I'm like, that's not a great message to end your Superman comic on. And Yang doesn't exactly end it there, but he kind of does, and that's where I feel conflicted.
Okay, I was really close to something, and then it just popped into me. So,
sorry.
For an interaction like this to work, a white brunette girl would have to become a character. I think there's even a joke where Roberta doesn't know her name for a while, so she'd have to be. Right now, she's white brunette girl who's here to say microaggressions and have Roberta react to it. Yeah. Even if you just wanted to write good children's literature, you would want there to be a point where the kid knows what they're supposed to do or how to talk to other kids. So you might have it's why I keep bringing up like the centrist normie thing. You have the good guy Republican and you have the bad guy Republican. That's how you always do it if you want to have Republicans mentioned, or whatever the issue is. You take that out and fill that in. That's how you write normie trash. but it's good. It's actually good. It's good trash. All right.
I love normie trash. Don't you talk bad about my normie trash.
So then, if we had,
I write normie trash.
if we imagine the alternate universe, we could have the white girl be an actual character, be memorable, have a personality, and have Roberta and the white girl actually have a back and forth where they come to understand each other, right? So it's like Roberta would have to understand that the white girl's actually trying to be charitable and sympathetic to her. And the white girl would kind of get, oh, I get it. Just because you're Chinese doesn't mean I have to treat you different. Oh, it's that easy. Like it's like this dumb sitcom thing where a lot of these problems could be fixed with a simple conversation. And what's stopping Yang from writing like that stupid, simple, this is how you explain it to a 6-year-old conversation?
So
go ahead.
Here's my problem with that, though.
It's like the college degree.
My problem with that is that the idea that you would treat her exactly the same and treat her no differently, I don't think that Yang's okay with that either.
Right, okay.
Right, but yeah, I don't think Yang's okay with that. I don't think he can accept that either, because I think the fact that Roberta is the main character here is extremely telling, because he had a character from the radio program in Tommy. He chose not to follow Tommy's story for a very specific reason, and I think it's because he does not identify with it, because Tommy is the colorblind character who accepts the colorblind idea. And that's not really okay with Yang. Yang specifically rejects Roberta as a name. Tommy has embraced that name, and for all we know, Tommy was the name that was chosen for him. But when Yang creates the story, use our American names. Those names were created as a fiction on top of our actual names. And Roberta has to, is it Lynch? I forget it again. Lynchy. She embraces that name in particular and kind of rejects the Roberta name. She embraces that other side. She's pulling the American-born Chinese move. So this is, again, the conundrum of the whole like microaggression feeling, is the fact that, the brunette should just treat me no differently. Except if she were to do that, she would be making a whole bunch of other mistakes that would be erasing my Chinese identity. So there really is no proper way except for her to be like, for her to be problematic.
Okay.
Be better. And that's hang your head in shame, because there is no real way for you to do this right.
Can I Can I propose something?
Yes, please.
Okay. So like you guys, I think we all think about this a lot because I think all of our adult lives this has been like a main issue in public discourse. And
Not mine.
Oh, yeah, you're a little.
I got to move to Nebraska.
No, it's because well, that's not part is because I'm older. So like this stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Like okay, and I live okay. It's total side detraction, but Scotts Bluff is about 1/3 Hispanic and Hispanic descended, and then 2/3 like other stuff, mostly German. And so like there's definitely been racial conflicts in our town history and stuff that got talked about, but because it's such a large population, people are pretty acknowledging that that's a fact of history. And there's been a fair amount of integration during that time of the segregation, voluntary segregation too, because of it's just of how the size of the town and everything else. So that was, but there wasn't necessarily a lot of tension, even if there was some tension, and people just kind of went on about their business with it anyway, right? So, so that's part of it. But culturally, because I grew up in the, I came to my adulthood in the 90s. Culturally, we were still in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air era, right? So it didn't start getting pretentious for the average guy until probably Trayvon Martin. So I would say
that late in the game. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, something around that. I mean, like when people were, because like, okay, that episode of The Office where he's like, okay, you guys are the ones in power now because Barack Obama's president. So now, that whole thing, that was almost the attitude people had, like that I would run into on a daily basis, because it was one of those things where it was like, we all watch Steve Urkel on things. We all watch, listen to Raw, to Eddie Murphy Raw.
Sonic the Hedgehog,
all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't even a situation. I mean, like the unified culture up and through that existed outside of academia was part of my growing up. And so, and so for as I'm learning more about American history and learning more about the deviousness of the Ku Klux Klan and the Democrat Party and the American Socialists and how they co-opted racial grievance politics starting in the 20s, and how but that was had been largely rejected and was moving more and more that way up until it got a main stage on the news, up until people were able to, and like the amount of outcry over the average person I ran into over the Rodney King beating, and how offended people were about all that. Was one of those things where it was like, no, we want to be one people, and I can't believe this was definitely a miscarriage of justice. And even though that was going on, and people were that there was this racial grievance that had happened, there's a racial component to all of it, and there was the looting in LA. The people that I had contact with is like, this is not how it's supposed to go, and we need to come together as one people. So and that had been a
and even that message has been kind of
there's
lost somewhat.
I've got a relevant image to pull while we're talking. But because this is the moment that I've got pulled here that has Lin Shin or Roberta kind of like, this is the
don't mispronounce that. Don't I know don't call her Lynchin.
I've screwed up.
The wrong comic for that.
Damn it, Matt.
Sorry. Is that
Lanchin?
Gene Luen Yang's like, did I do that?
Oh no.
By the way, Matt C, can I just say I'm sorry that we've taken your first Superman comic and we've basically just been dumping on it. You came in saying, I
like it less now. Yeah.
We ruined it for you. Yes. We ruined your first
mission accomplished, Mark.
I started out thinking Superman was like this guardian angel of America, and it was kind of cool, and now it's like,
well, he is. That's not necessarily how he's being used.
Oh yeah, I it's so funny because we've talked a lot about Roberta and Tommy, but we didn't talk about
Superman.
We haven't talked about Superman but we actually have, because Superman basically goes through the exact same arc that that Roberta goes through. The only thing I will say is that I think that where Superman ends in the story is a lot better than where Roberta ends. Superman's kind of like integrationist approach is way better. And I think partially it's because he is a fictional character. And so Yang can, in fact, imagine a more, I guess,
a little more aspirational.
I noticed this. Some of Yang's, if we purely see Superman's story as a parallel to Roberta's story, some of the propaganda messaging wouldn't work, right? Which is a question of, is that Yang being more complex in his thought than being a progressive, or is that Yang just okay? So one of the things Superman struggles with is controlling his powers, right? And so one of the scenes that illustrates that is he starts feeling his powers flare up. It's like he's going to have lasers shoot out of his eyes and fry one of these kids, right? And he controls that impulse. That symbolically is connected to an immigrant or an alien suppressing themselves to fit in, but it's a really good thing that Clark Kent didn't fire his laser beam eyes and evaporate the kid, right? So that's almost like a pro assimilation message, where if you're an alien with laser beam eyes, you probably want to learn how to control the laser beam eyes.
Did you know?
Because all the things that make him super are also the things that are allegorically elements from his immigrant past, like being able to fly and not just run fast and jump high. So that's kind of interesting. Like he can, and we can even spin this. We could go black pill with that, or we could say, like that's his immigrant past is actually now contributing to and enriching this melting pot kind of thing, and he shouldn't feel like he needs to suppress that in a white dominant culture. Because he feels like there's not space for that. Like America is white. Like he should feel like America happens to be white, but America is a universal concept, and he can be super in that space, I guess. And he's going to actually contribute. He's going to be more super, and America is going to benefit more because of his extra superness, because he's fully embraced his immigrant identity in a way, like as an American.
Yes.
That's the white pill, but
right.
Yeah.
And I wish Roberta. It's almost, I think that Yang's personal identity struggle stopped him from letting Roberta have that kind of closure that Superman got at the end.
Yes, correct. Definitely. I would also say, did anyone notice that Pete Ross got ruined in this too?
Well, I noticed, I spotted Pete Ross, but I didn't. He's reading the comic books. And he's Superman's bestest buddy from the good old Superboy. He was the redhead kid who was reading comic books with Clark in that one scene.
Oh, okay.
And he's basically one of Superman's like old Smallville pals. In this story, Pete Ross basically, it's not explicitly stated, but Superman defends him from being bullied and shoots off his laser vision. And Pete Ross basically says, "Get away from me," and runs away. And that's the last we see of Pete Ross. And Pete Ross Pete Ross is basically used as a, kind of a stand-in for the, I can't understand this, foreign entity, and therefore I reject you. And he's gone. And then Lana Lang basically takes his place, the redhead girl. But like Pete Ross is out of the story. And it's like, it's like, do we have to like drag some of these legacy characters to... It's like, no,
I mean, part of it, like, and it's interesting that three of us have a history of writing female heroine stories, and we're comfortable with that. And I think Gene is also comfortable with that. And I think sometimes when he's struggling to humanize a narrative in a situation, he'll bring in a female character to help him do that, or he'll invent one that wasn't there before in order to do that. I think that's just like, maybe it's a sensibility thing for him. That goes with Roberta, but a lot of
female articulates the kind of emotional sensibility that the guys make fun of each other, girls talk about their feelings, right? So there's a certain type of guy writer who wants a female character to articulate that kind of emotional sensibility.
Yeah, which is it's kind of a puppetry move in a way, but yeah, like he feels a little distant, I think, from male characters sometimes, and female characters.
At the risk of this comes back to something that, like Marm was saying, I think some of that comes back to the nerd thing, right? If you're sure. Because like I kept wanting to interrupt him saying, oh, you know, when you're a nerd, you go back and look at you and you have nerd vision when you grow up. And I'm like, I understand that. I grew up in that, but I kind of don't relate to that anymore after having procreated, like, and raised my children to adulthood. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
so you ceased to be a virgin and you became a Chad.
Exactly. and I mean, and that's sort of the situation I think that we're in here is like, there's some of that with the even the idea of Superman is becoming that, you know, something bigger than that and representing something bigger than your struggles. And I think that in a certain aspect, I think Yang may be struggling with that dichotomy. I don't know if he's had kids or whatever, but he seems, a lot of his stuff seems to be stuck in that the virgin aspect instead of moving on to what's the rest of the point of life, right? You're not, because like the point, because that's part of the thing is the point of life isn't just about, you know, finding your place in the world and fulfillment. It's about building the goddamn future by making some babies and raising them up.
We could have an entire conversation about Yang's usage of masculinity, starting all the way back from American.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
All the way back to American-born Chinese, through Boxer and Saints, and through this one. Yeah, so this is the Pete Ross point. And notice at the very end, I too always suspected I didn't belong. And like, so the whole immigrant experience is juxtaposed next to his best friend running off, and we never see him again. Yeah. And that's part of the thing where it comes around at is, you know, Clark just decides he belongs. He doesn't let somebody else define whether he belongs or not. He's like, this is my home. These are my people. I was just a little bummed that we had to sacrifice Pete Ross to make
I'll give you that.
to make another racial point.
Sure. That's an example though of this is like very Superman lore nerd specific thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with random kid. But
exactly.
It's like I did like, oh, it's Pete Ross, that's cool, and I didn't like activate my nerd vision to say, wait, Pete Ross is a great guy, right? So like that part actually blew by me, right? This is something that could be fixed by just have it be some random unnamed kid.
Exactly. But again, to me, I'm like, this was another moment where that really reinforces the idea to me of where Yang's priorities are and the story he's telling. And he's willing to sacrifice some of these the things in Superman so he can tell his racial story. And I don't know how comfortable I am with that because of what Superman. I'm not saying you can't ever tell a racial story to Superman. I'm just saying that this type, I guess, of racial story and the way he's choosing to tell it. I don't know. Like I said, I'm conflicted about it.
Well, and I guess, and part of it for me, like I didn't take this scene as the ruining of Pete Ross because in my mind, there's a whole extra set of stories where Pete comes back around because that's what Pete does, right? And because I'm pretty deep in a lot of the lore and stuff, and so even because and I don't even accept Pete and Lana's split. I mean that didn't happen. They've got a whole slew of kids back home. I mean that's
you have what we call a fan canon.
I do. But I mean part of it is that because that's when I quit. Because part of it is they were still together when I dipped out of reading Superman comics. So it kind of that's still stuck. I'm aware they split up later on because they wanted to add some weird tension with Lois and that was a whole thing. But you know, that was a stupid storyline. It's like Holly's death. It didn't count. Catwoman's Holly, by the way.
Can we say that
but I was saying like for me, like it doesn't necessarily ruin Pete. It's just a moment of time. There's so much that goes on in comics like behind the scenes that we never see because we only see the interesting bits. And this is only
to me, he was just another redhead in this.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to point out this is the most Superman nerdy we've gotten so far. The lore is wrong.
Yeah.
I don't care about lore changes as long as the overarching story is working. Overarching story didn't work for me.
So it's breaking down.
Yeah. I would have if he had nailed the overarching story, I'd have said, yeah, go ahead, futz around with some of the little extra lore side characters.
Worth it.
And so, but here's the thing, though. I'm going to go back to in order to make the overall story work, he either had to go hyper Christian or he had to go hyper American, and you can't tell a hyper American story at DC.
Okay, I want to push back. I want to push back. All right, I've got a great devil's advocate moment here. Okay. All right, so I want to make an argument for the progressive position. Here we go. All right, so
I've been trying to do that. So
yeah,
do it.
okay, me and Matt. Yeah.
Hey,
all
bada
right.
bada. Hey, bada bada.
Okay, so maybe
Well,
Matsy, you should. Okay,
Base
you should take.
Twitless is gonna
You should
knock
take.
it.
All right, Matsy, you should take this and run with this. So
No,
as a-
you do it, please.
all right, as a
please.
Christian, I do not want to be assimilated into a secular culture. I want the secular culture to leave me alone and let me do all my Christian things on my own, right? When we are a Christian culture, it's very, very, I don't have to have that struggle. In a post-Christian culture, I suddenly have that struggle. Therefore, I see a real connection with the immigrant struggle problem. I don't want to get assimilated into the white culture. Well, I don't want to get assimilated into the NPC culture. So what gives the progressive worldview its warmth, I think, is this feeling of your individuality getting assimilated into a societal construct that you have no control over. The progressive racial narrative makes that a racial framing device. I think we should look at it as a individual versus the society problem, where a Christian can identify with that, a Republican can identify with that, a person with any race can identify with that, or basically any like weird person with an outsider perspective or culture could identify that dilemma.
So here's my
So
pushback
how do
on
we
that.
how do we square being a Christian and wanting that individuality with the angle that Yang is bringing in?
So here's
well, just can we just make sure?
That's it,
'cause
yeah.
I think we all want to interact with that. Like, are you saying when you say we, you're talking about us as Americans? Like you're
As
talking about
Christians.
that?
I'm sorry. I was saying
individualization.
we. I was saying we collectively as Christians, not we collectively as white people or we collectively as Americans. We collectively as Christians want to express a Christian identity and live a Christian life in a culture where we feel like the minority.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I almost don't like the melting pot theory, because now people want to take me and put me in the melting pot, and the melting pot is secular now. So maybe the progressives had a point that it shouldn't be a melting pot approach
because it's secular normative now, and so yeah.
So here's the issue. Here's the problem: is that the progressive, the modern progressive concept of identity is a collectivist groupthink.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of this racial grievance politics, all of this racial identitarianism is specifically designed to antithesize and create a synthesis where the power elite get to dictate what the average man does. You lose all individuality in the Marxian future. And so it's not a melting pot, because here's the thing about a melting pot. People like don't understand like the metallurgy aspect of all of this. Right? When you melt metals, because that's what it comes from. When you melt metals together, the metal aspects, the different constituent aspects of the mix, maintain their properties and develop new properties based upon the things that are added to it. Right?
This stream has gone places. I'll tell you.
Yeah, this is
the whole
one of the better
concept of the melting pot is that it creates a new something that it keeps the benefits of the old something. But with the progressive synthesis, everything that's left is just oatmeal. There's nothing there except the ruling elite that claim that they're not the ruling elite, that still run everything, because it's a bait and switch to create a new ruling class. It's the same mercantilism, the same authoritarian governance as before, with a new ruling class on the top of it.
Who, by the way, control the Ku Klux Klan in this book. The racism is created by evil, wealthy international interests to create division and create power. Based.
And that's part of it. And so he actually and that was hinted at in the radio play, and doubled down with the fact that the props that they were using or claiming to be great and ancient were sold down at the dollar store, all the swords and stuff, and they Yang doubled down on that and even made it more ridiculous. But the fact of the matter is that it's still, by not saying this is American and this is not, by not presenting a sound philosophical basis for the heroes to juxtapose the philosophy of the villains, we really don't have anything that gives it the undergirding in a way that gives it any weight to it.
Right. We just have tomorrow.
Mhm.
We all have
And
a
I
few-
think,
we have a
and I think
future.
that tomorrow is something. You think it's nothing. I think it's something because it involves human will, and that requires individuality.
I think
But
you're being. This is a weird position. I'm usually the one who's more generous. I think you're being more generous with that reading.
well, it's because part of it is like
It's kind of neat. Yeah.
So here's part of the thing is this is something that, like, once again, folks don't. There's thinking that happens before we think we're thinking, and the requirement, like, people don't pay attention to the amount of what agency really means, and so the fact that this hinges upon agency is more profound than I think people want to give it credit for. But that's because that's an idea that grows into a bigger idea if you really think about it. And I understand that, like, maybe there's too many distractions in the book, the microaggression talk and all that kind of stuff, to really focus on what that means. About what is the power of agency and will in that kind of a situation. And it's hampered.
Okay.
The strength of that is hampered by not having a unified vision of what it means to be us, which is truth, justice, and the American way.
So speaking to James Hayes' point there, I actually have pulled up the quote from the Grand Mogul Ku Klux Klan guy that spells out, and this was a very interesting moment, not only in the comic, it was spelled out in the radio show. It was one of the more did you drop that?
No.
Here, hang on.
Or did
I hit the wrong button. I meant to add to stream. I removed that.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, this was pretty much verbatim, if I remember right.
Yeah,
it was
really
almost
close.
1-to-1.
The difference
With
is
the
they don't
exception
have
of the power element, he does something. Yeah,
but
take it away.
Yeah, but the idea here. Oh, go ahead, Matt. I've been talking too much. You're the one who plugged this one.
No, well. So the Grand Poobah here, he pretty much says everything that, like, oh, this was just fake. We were just trying to make some money, and that's he says the same thing that the radio play does, but instead, because the radio play is just mere aspirational, fun propaganda, it doesn't have any sort of need to, like, rationalize above and beyond that. It lands a joke and then it moves on. In this version, because this comic isn't written for kids, it's trying to, like, figure out how to rationalize an overarching what would someone want to cynically use race and race baiting, race politics to do, like, why would they be trying to make money from race baiting if they didn't actually believe in racial grievances? And so he gives that underlying narrative that it's really to do with what is he say? You stupid fool, you think the world is divided by race, it's really divided by power. I have the power and you do not. Our skin may be the same color, but we are nothing alike. You are an insect, I am a god. So I thought that was really interesting that he would go there. So
I would argue that this is Yang showing his more lefty colors, because this is a Marxist understanding of how the world works.
Yeah, this
is Marxism.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing is like it absolutely is. It is a Marxist aspect.
Yeah.
And it's
but this is the villain, right? This
right,
is the villain.
Mm-hmm.
But the right says this about Marxist racial identity politics. That horseshoe theory, if you push along the political axis enough, we start talking the same as the people in the kooky opposite camp from us. Now, I don't know if I'm joking when I say this is based. I don't know if
I think I'm on the other side of the horseshoe. Like, this, to me, I was like, oh, thank you for doing this. Thank you, very good, Gene. I appreciate you showing, like, you climb this racial grievance ladder, and eventually you just find Marxism.
Well, and and I actually believe that's exactly what it is, because I reject the horseshoe theory, but that's a topic for a different day.
Let me put it this way, without going into horseshoe theory. You can see the fact that the real evil here, right? Because right before that, what were they talking about? They were talking about money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he has the power, which means he has the money. So the real evil here is the capitalist superstructure that allows for the haves to basically play racial games with the have-nots and divide them against each other. So the real villain here, in a sense, at least in this, as it's portrayed in this scene, the real villain is I think potentially even deeper than race. It's again capitalism, and the greed that allows people to basically separate into social castes, which then allow the powerful to then play the other lower classes against each other. Because this is the moment. This is probably the moment that Matt Riggs gets the most sympathy. The entire comic, he has been just a evil Aryan guy. This moment, he gets a little bit of sympathy because the guy who's above him, the rich, because this is the rich guy who's in charge of the bacteriologist lab and all that stuff, basically shows the real power structure.
Well, and the thing is frustrating to me about that is that every racial grievance group has the same structure. I mean, that it is that. Like, I mean, one of the co-founders of BLM just bought her 4th house. It's all a grift. It's about establishing a new ruling class, and all the stuff about setting up the utopian state where there's no hierarchy is just food for the rubes, so that they go.
I guess the disagreement is whether or not could Gene tell this same scene where it's two people of a different race, and I guess he probably wouldn't think to do that, and he probably wouldn't be comfortable with that, and I would be equally comfortable with that, as just as I am with him doing that with someone of as Gene would put it, of my race, because I'm not even accepting a lot of his base assumptions about race. So
yeah, I would also.
When I see this, I see two other people. I don't see people I identify with. So
can I say something? Can I say something like Alex Jones level? Okay, all right, here we go.
They're putting chemicals in the water.
Lefties think that lefties think white capitalists are the evil overlords manipulating everything. 4chan thinks who's are the evil people at the top of the world orchestrating everything. I think evil Satanists are the ones at the top of the world orchestrating everything. There you go.
I would agree. And I think that many people are evil Satanists who don't even believe Satan exists.
Right. Like they believe in Satan ironically. Oh, it's not the biblical Satan. It's
or even that. I mean, Satan's whole thing is, you can be like gods. Well, tons of people think that they're running the goddamn planet, and they're Satanists.
Yeah, okay, and he says that here, and he's a Catholic. Like when he puts that in the mouth of someone, I feel like in a story where he's been kind of ringing these sort of allegorical biblical symbols at different times. Like I don't know. I'd be agnostic in other. Oh hey. Hey, Hound. He's a friend of mine.
Oh, cool.
Other people would do that, and we wouldn't know what to do with it. We know what to do with Gene having a villain saying that he's God. We know that he's probably thinking of a satanic type archetype there.
I will say that as a counterpoint to this scene, the radio play just has it, and again, it's word for word in some respects, but it's simpler in the sense that this is just a money-making scheme by gangsters, and that's the Clan of the Fiery Cross is specifically portrayed as just as much of a criminal gang as any of the other mobsters that Superman have fought for the duration of that show. And that was part of the point of the radio play, was to basically show the Klan is not a great organization. They're just a bunch of crooks. And again, they're the exception and not the rule. And like I said, Yang is much more informed by postmodern theories of both race, class, and society. And so those things are informing this work, which transform it in subtle yet, I would say, significant ways.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, I would agree with that. and I think a lot of that. Okay, this is a way we can maybe start to conclude. But I think that progressive is so okay. So the American project, I think of it as it's foundationally it's a Christian project, and then the post-Christian progressivist version of that is kind of like a Christian heresy of sorts, and people tend to argue about that.
Yeah, it's Gnostic. It's fully Gnostic.
Yeah, well, sure, but it's also it's apocalyptic. There's a lot of things they're taking. It's downstream of Christianity, and almost you can tie it to something in Christianity in almost every respect, I think. But it's downstream and it's distinct from. And I think that progressivists, and I think to the extent to which Gene may or may not be a progressivist, I think they deeply believe in the American project as a heretical offshoot of the Christian version of that civic vision of America. I think so. The progressivist civic vision is that all these microaggressions are microaggressions here, and in Western cultures, you wouldn't think of them that way in other countries, but you would think of them here because these are the countries that are meant to be microcosms of universal human value. Like, they're not even supposed to be nations. They're just supposed to be petri dishes for the future, I guess, in some way. Like heaven is going, like the progressivist vision is going to descend from Marxist heaven, and it's going to land first in these countries specifically, particularly America, but also in England and a few other countries. But primarily in America, it's going to start here, and then it's going to advance across the planet.
Okay,
and update humanity, which is kind of you can see, like, there's a lot of like America equals Israel, or there's a lot of these confused American civic visions here, and so he's dealing with that, where like he really believes in America with a particular racialist progressivist framing here, because he wants America to work, and his vision of America, and he's frustrated that there's still too many white people, so that it's not balanced enough yet, because America's supposed to not be a nation. It's supposed to be a microcosm of the planet.
How much did we change your perspective on this book in the course of
No, I think it's knocked back down to all the other books, which I enjoy reading, and it brings up a lot of stuff, and we get to psychoanalyze this guy. But I don't know if it's any better than any others. But all that to say, like, he wouldn't have these critiques, these endless microaggression critiques, if he thought that America was just a country. He expects it to be some sort of sublime
globalist.
A globalist, like a evolved state of humanity. And whenever he sees white people not maybe catching up to that vision, he wants to help them. He wants to compassionately or critically chide them to catch up, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that's
the vision.
Right.
So they really believe in America. It's just a different America.
Well, yeah, they believe in America of their own imagination, just like they believe in the ideal Marxian man as, the inevitable future of a raceless, classless society. Well, you get that by letting people just mingle about themselves. They'll figure it out on their own. You don't have to remake them, and that's one of the whole neo-Marxist concept started arising because capitalism was balancing people out and giving them productive ways of increasing their life, and so they had to come up with new things to be upset about.
So if I'm understanding Matt's argument correctly, I typed it in chat. So you're saying that Yang believes in his version of globalist America. Is that?
I hate to. I was trying to avoid the word globalist, because I'm thinking of it. I genuinely think that the Progressive Project thinks that America is special, and we need to distinguish America from every other country on the planet.
Okay, so it's like,
but
it's
not
like
for any sort of constitutional reason, or not for any biblical reason. But
we're special because we allow immigrants in. That's what makes America special.
It's not just about letting them in, though. So, like, so Matt's talking about this globalist or global. I'll even take the word globalist out. I'll just say global.
Okay. Well, I want to throw something on there. This is
I don't know if there's a term for it yet. Maybe
I
I
have this. I'm going to throw this out there. This is gonna rankle against a lot of things. I believe there is something deeply Catholic about that impulse, like in the linguistic sense, right?
Like big C or little c?
Little c, universalist, right?
Yeah.
Right. In that the Catholic Church,
yeah,
in the naming of it.
It's a very Catholic vision, and that's why he's frustrated.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, not necessarily doctrinally,
yeah,
but in the terms of the philosophy that said, "Oh, there is one way of being, but we all have to be the one way of being differently."
Like, there's some paradoxes in there.
I agree. Well, that's
that's
the nature of postmodernist thought.
Oh boy,
Is that it relishes in the concept of deconstruction.
It is too late for me to wrestle with those contradictions.
No,
my brain is falling apart.
Oh, by the way, side note. Speaking about Marxist theory, if you guys go to my YouTube, my Twitter timeline, I posted a couple of long form videos about grooming schools that go back to that all talk about a Marxist gender theory, and it is some terrifyingly scary stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Check it out if you got 5 hours and want to hurt your soul.
That was a great pitch, Rhys.
Yeah. So all that to say, so Chinese immigrants can come here. They can be fully Chinese. They can be better Chinese, and maybe this is where it starts to feel globalist again. They can actualize their Chinese identity here. Somehow they can do that better here than in China. And I think that has to do with that progressivist Catholic vision of like, here we're going to do everyone gets to come here and we get to be the planet within these, within this boundary. And then we're going to advance that out in some way. I don't know.
Doesn't that conflict though? And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, but doesn't that conflict with the whole idea of it being wrong to believe in American exceptionalism and American supremacy? Because a lot of the people on the progressive side to spend most of their time critiquing that idea that you could be more Chinese here, and that makes it somehow we're better. So I feel like I think you're onto something there, but I feel like we also then very quickly run into these contradictions and paradoxes.
All right, but it's here that they're going to melt that down and they're going to build the new man. That's why they still think
I feel like I'm tracking with Matt C so hard. Okay. Yeah, it's like it's Matt C. It's kind of like you're trying to break down the auto right versus left category boxes to get at something where, well, progressives think they're this, but what if they're something other than what they think they are? Like I've often thought,
they are.
A lot of progressive racial dialect is actually Christian. They're borrowing Christian ideas and imagery and trying to apply it to racial politics without Christ. It's sort of like Matt C's making the point that it's like the left has their version of American exceptionalism, but that they wouldn't call it American exceptionalism. It functions in a similar.
They're still going to fix the planet and every race from this country. This is the place where it gets to happen.
It's like I'd add that
no other country.
The phrase "the white man's burden" used to be kind of a thing. Upper crust British people would say, we got to do this to help the world because we're the preeminent race in the world, right?
Yeah.
So now we look back at that and say, that's so racist. But that would have been like the progressive position of their day, essentially.
And in fairness, some of that the white man's burden talking points were specifically about how Britain was spending money to eradicate the international slave trade.
Yeah.
So like that's some good shit.
Well, it was framed. Yeah, it was framed. It was said
It was the same.
It was
kind of
understood that would be a compassionate statement to talk about the white man's version.
Yeah.
I mean, burden. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're still doing that today, is all I'm saying.
Well,
And
I mean,
that's-
this is part of the thing that we come to, like, so when Britain was spending, millions of pounds in convincing, foreign countries to stop trading in slaves, whether it be through military might, through trade embargoes, through all this kind of stuff, when they were actively invested in this, they were doing it out of a leftover Christian impulse, and much of the nation was still faithful at that point, right? And they were saying, "Look, this is something that we've believed. We've said we've believed. We have to commit to it." It was very similar in the situation with freeing the slaves, giving black people the vote, giving women the vote. If we really believe these things, we have to do that. The thing about the whole Marxist idea, and I think you're right that we have this idea to create the new man, is it wishes to do that by extracting the work of the divine, by pulling out the thing, and it's and I mean, I'm telling you guys, the Bible predicted this, right? It's specifically, they desire the likely I'm going to screw up the phrasing, the appearance of godliness, but deny the power thereof, right? They want the things that God provides without acknowledging that it is He that makes it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's heretical.
Yeah, it is, and it's.
But it is a thing, and it's not just globalism.
No, it's something.
It's heresy. Time for the Inquisition.
You understand politics better if you understand what the classical Christian heresies are.
This is true. This is true because this comes. There are no new ideas. There's just new wrapping paper for them.
That's. I will say I do love me some ecclesiastical. There is nothing new under the sun. You could track so much stuff from that one book of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Vanity, vanity, vanity.
You ain't wrong.
Well, let's start to bring some of this home. Let's talk about. Let's wrap this up by.
2.5 hours. Holy cow!
Let's wrap this up by placing Superman Smashes the Klan against the over of what we've currently read of Yang's work in this group. So, American-born Chinese, Boxers, Saints, Shadow Hero. I personally put this. There are some things I like. So in terms of to kind of like personally, there like the coloring is good. Gene did not do the artwork for this, so he was purely a writer. So we can't really talk as much about his work as an artist. The artist did, I think, a pretty competent job with a youthful art style. Again, the coloring was really colorful. I really did coloring. Matt, see, I definitely since you're a strong colorist, I definitely think the color of this particular piece was very strong.
I love the colors.
Yeah, the color here was really good. I would say that from a story perspective, I put this one on the lower end of the Yangs that we've read. I'd probably it's definitely below Shadow Hero. I think that for doing a superhero comic and still addressing the telling the same story that Yang has told like 4 times now, I think the best time he told this story, it was in Shadow Hero. So I would, as much as I like Superman, and the recognizable characters there, if you said, "Hey, Shadow Hero 2 is coming out," my ears would perk up and I'd go, I want to read Shadow Hero 2. If he said, "I'm releasing a sequel to Superman Smashes the Klan," I would go pass. I don't know where I don't know where it stacks up against American-born Chinese or Boxers and Saints. I think I like Boxers and Saints a little bit more in some respects, but less in others. So it's kind of a mixture for me, but definitely below Shadow Hero. That's my review in that tier list.
Yeah, I would have to say that I think Shadow Hero is probably the top. I think Boxers and Saints is a really close second on that one. And Evie, I would count Boxers and Saints as a single book, even though it's not, but it is. And then I like American-born Chinese a lot, but I don't think as much as Boxers and Saints. And I tell you what, if if we would have gotten a really solid, a more solid adaptation of the radio play, we got a little more of that foundational understanding. I think this would have been right up there, but I think I got to put it at a distant fourth.
Wow.
I will say, unfortunately, because of how much this story focused on the just the racial quagmire, it's actually lowered my, because this sometimes happens. One work makes you reflect back on other works. This work makes me reflect back and appreciate American-born Chinese a little less as well, because the same kind of microaggression-y stuff is going on there. And this work is playing it much more heavily, but it makes me think back and go, you know what? I remember this in American-born Chinese more than when I first read the book. So it's interesting how one work makes you actually reflect back on others, and it makes me appreciate Shadow Hero more, because Shadow Hero is just a pure entertainment that still hits some of these notes, so it doesn't ignore these things, but it does so in a way where I don't feel like bad when I'm done reading it.
Well, remember, Shadow Hero does that thing that Marm's talking about, that normie thing. So you've got the good guys and the bad guys. They're the same kind of guys, and so it gets into that. So
yeah, and it was written before Donald Trump. So
actually,
Clash of the Klan was like 2019 or something, 2018.
I think 19. Yeah.
Yeah. So everything is like, okay, now we need to revisit some things.
Yeah. That's one of that's part of the thing too, is like, once again, because Yang won't call out the right villains.
Yeah.
You know, he'll call out the Ku Klux Klan, but not mention that they were 100% Democrats. You know,
this experience is actually elevating Boxers and Saints in my tier list. It was actually on the lower end, but now because of the more I read the rest of the body of work, I think Shadow Hero and Boxers and Saints are starting to kind of drift towards the top on my list. What about you, Marm and Matt?
Yeah, okay, Marm, you go.
Okay, yeah, because what I was going to say kind of segues into what Twitless was saying. So I always Francis Schaeffer had this great quote in Art in the Bible that changed my life, which is "do justice to the artist," or something like that, right? And that it's like that stuck with me forever. So the problem with trying to evaluate this work is I want to do justice to the artist, and how do I separate my feelings about the individual work from my view of the overarching work? Now that I've read, is this everything? I guess he's written some Avatar comics. These are his main books,
and the new Superman.
Yeah,
he's written quite a bit more. This series will go on for a while.
All right.
He wrote a book about coders and one about basketball. So we've got some stuff. Okay. We got some interesting stuff to read following this.
So, I want to say one thing about this book, trying to look at it purely on its own, and then I want to say something about this book and how it relates to his other work. Looking at this book purely on its own, it is a fun Superman story by an incredibly talented and thoughtful writer who is researching the history. But because of what we've been talking about this whole time, it's like a turd in a beautiful BLT. I love the bacon, I love the lettuce, I love the tomato. This is my least favorite of his 4 works, and it's almost like it takes a really talented person to make something that's wonderful that's hurt. Untalented hacks just crank out boring crap that's completely forgettable. Yang makes things that I'm really loving and really resonating with and really respecting, and something about his messaging just hurts me. Second, I also think Superman Smashes the Klan is not nearly as well plotted as his other books. They're like big chunks of Superman Smashes the Klan, or I'm just like, yeah, okay, chase the Klan, chase the Klan, chase the Klan.
It's competent.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm sorry.
The last thing I was going to say, comparing it to the rest of his work, is I am much more forgiving of an artist for experimenting and doing weird things in personal statements. American-born Chinese and Boxer Saints are incredibly personal statements trying to work this out. Therefore, I not only forgive, but I actually kind of respect the experimental aspects of those books. They fit with the type of story he's telling. The experimental aspects that Yang is usually pretty good at don't fit with what should be like a really basic Superman story. So I put it at the bottom. Yeah,
that's a really good point.
And I think that actually, to reinforce it, look at the Shadow Hero, where he's doing so much to homage the creator of the Green Turtle, right? So that it's got so much respect for that creator's stuff that like there's very little modern politics that's inflicted into it. Very little of this. It's very much of an immigrant story. It's very much of a story of belonging. It's very much a story of owning your choices, owning your consequences, because that fits the nature of the Golden Age character.
It peeks its head up, but it's very, you blink and you almost miss it.
And that's one thing I want to not to interrupt you, Matt, but to go on this. It's my show.
No, yeah.
Is that looking at like the way Superman was handled, the Superman portions were I think were very competent, and the Superman's ownership of his journey and ownership of his citizenship is not out of line with how Superman's been portrayed in other sources. It's just that you don't necessarily have the same level of sensitivity to the other characters that are in play.
Yeah, see, you're the last one to rank them.
I really wanted somebody to pull out the Declaration and beat somebody in the head with it.
Yeah. Only Donald Trump would do that, Matt Rhys. We don't.
or Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so he rescues the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
All right, take us home, Matt.
So given that this is the first time I've read Superman, I want to still rate this highly in a way because now I think I really like Superman. I think I get at least this take helped me, and it wasn't jarring because we've been reading Gene for months now, and I already get his voice and I get his themes. So the new element here was Superman, and that was kind of cool. And I get he's like the guardian angel of America, and I'm trying to make sure I don't confuse the radio play with this comic, where that was much more clearly portrayed in the radio play, and then here he's spending a lot more time, as you would in current year comics. He's spending a lot more time wrestling with his own immigrant identity than he is being a guardian angel. But I don't know. Like I still feel like there's something more aspirational, and maybe it's Superman that helps him to do that. But I don't know. Maybe some sort of distance with the subject matter. I don't know. Or it's just like it has to be. It's a DC property. He has to be. He's forcing himself to be more aspirational. I do admire here. So
I think you can look at Shadow Hero too. The way the anchor of justice is portrayed, he's very much the golden.
Oh gosh, yeah, definitely.
So I mean,
I like it. Like I guess I just like I still want to rate this pretty well for the sake that I feel like he's managed to import more Christian contributions to the conversation, which I think it, like any honest conversation about racial multiculturalism in America, has to have a Christian side to that conversation, and he does it more than any other mainstream comic I've seen, because that's what he does. And so he pushed it farther. He wasn't able to go. He can't have Superman take everyone to church at the end, but he took me farther than I've seen like an X-Men comic do. So I want to appreciate that, but still, I guess I probably his earlier works are better. Like American Born Chinese is raw and angry and confused, and very honest, and I appreciate that. And then Boxers and Saints has a calmer elegance to it, and like a compassionate. There's like a tragic. I don't know. I love the almost love story of trying to reconcile something that is not. He's not dealing with racial tension in that point. He is kind of dealing with a sort of civic tension or like a cosmic identity tension, which is how I view. I'm not even seeing people in terms of race the way he's buying into things. I'm seeing things more in a Boxers and Saints system where there's different cosmic forces at work. So I can more clearly, I don't know, I can see myself better in that story, and I think maybe he can see himself better in that story. Frankly, Boxers and Saints might still be the best version of this story he's told 4 times, but then probably as a cohesive, like just like a great story that's been figured out really well from beginning to end with like no bad scenes and a lot of good scenes. I mean, Shadow Hero is probably, I mean, that's just gonna get
That's the best movie.
first place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I desperately want more Shadow Hero.
sure.
I don't understand why like everybody isn't hounding for that and like showing up outside of Gene's house and demanding it with picket signs.
It's the brand recognition.
And I'm just like, it's just like
and it's the art style.
I love the DC universe, but like, and I mean, I'm buying the Blue and Gold miniseries that Dan Jurgens is writing, and it is just solid, good fun. I love it so much, but man, Warner Brothers can just choke on any number of things, man. It's just like they're poison to everything. And the more we get real heroes, the sooner they can die, and that'd be just fine by me. Maybe we're not meant to put the classics out to pasture just long enough for the powers that be to forget that they're there.
Yeah,
because the Shadow Hero is the good stuff, man.
Yeah, it was.
All right.
That was good, guys. That was thanks hanging out in the chat, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, chat. You made this amazing.
So 3 hours. Does anybody have the energy left to show, or should we just call it a show?
I always have energy to show.
What
are you talking about?
Let's send people to our stuff. Yeah, Twitless, you go first.
Well, give me a second. I have to pull stuff up.
All right. Well, I'll go while Twitless is doing that. My channel is #1 Marmaduke fan. I mirror these videos, and I tell everybody to go check out Matt Rhys and all you guys. My comic is Jane Smith, Wannabe Gladiator. The first
in the description.
Yep. First 53 pages are free to read on Webtoons. Yeah, that's all my stuff. So
Matt is I'll tell you, his shop is in the description too.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. So I do the Kyrie or Kyrie comic books. I draw and write those, and then I'm writing Wild Tales with a bunch of other artists. So
Twitless.
Check out The Adventures of Omega Girl, #1 on Amazon, or I've got a link to the Indie Planet if you want to get a print copy.
Which is in the description.
Oh, thank you. 24 pages crammed with classic superhero action. If you enjoyed Superman versus the Klan, I don't have my angle on the superhero storytelling is different, but we both have in common the classic superhero storytelling. And Yang did a pretty good job of capturing the classic kind of air and tone of things. So that's one thing that I definitely have to give him credit for. Thank you very much for checking us out, and more people can chill.
You can also check out Twitless's webcomic.
Oh yeah, I do that too.
Comedy Superschool.com.
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah. And mine, there's like 700 pages of teen angst and comedy and superheroes and death traps. There's a couple death traps. People with springs for arms. All kinds of stuff in there. It's in color on Webtoons. I don't have a link handy for that. But hey, make future comics happen by supporting me on Patreon. And hey, if you're not already subbed, do it. Because at 300, I'm going to mirror this over on Odyssey, but I don't have 300 subs yet, so they won't let me.
Oh.
So I didn't care
Yeah,
how many
they do.
subs I had until I found that out, and I was like, well, I'd really like to back up the thing somewhere, and I don't have time to download 3 years of content.
Can we just say Evie, I think, had the comment of the night. Well-read wishes he had. Comic.
I don't think that was
review
Evie. I
streams.
think that was
That was James Hayes.
That was James Hayes.
That was
Yeah.
that James Hayes. Oh, God
Yeah.
bless James Hayes.
But Evie does Evie's done some art of all of us, all of our faces. They're on the thumbnail.
Oh, yeah.
And in the description is a link to her shop. Buy art from Evie.
Is Evie a girl? I thought Evie was a guy. I thought we streamed with Evie once.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think
Evie. I'm
may
confusing you
have
with
been.
someone else.
I think you may have. Evie is a girl. I think you may have been on a stream with her like 2 years ago. But that's been a while. So,
Okay. Well,
Well,
read.
speaking
You
of-
have competition now.
So speaking of microaggressions,
Yeah. Was that a micro? Yeah.
you
Misgender. Well, Eevee's a Pokemon, so it could be I.
Oh, gosh.
Everyone on the internet is a guy. We all know that.
We
It's
all
all
know
the
that.
same guy.
Everyone on the internet is a cartoon Abby, including Matt Rhys. He just has an animated GIF with using futuristic technology we don't understand yet.
Yeah, it's all. I'm actually the same. I'm just the one guy.
Everyone on the internet is just a fad posting.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. So from all of us glowworms to you, have yourself a great night. I keep reading comics, and next week, I'm not sure. I think we're doing Civil War. I think we're doing the Civil War thing, but I gotta get all the guests rounded up.
Oh, goody.
But I'll be announcing for sure this weekend, I think. But yeah, I think we're talking about everything wrong with Civil War,
That's going to be a long one.
which is
I kind of think Matt C doesn't deserve to be punished if you're trying to get him into superhero comics. Why?
yeah. No, I'm not. I wasn't going to invite Matt for that one. Because I'm not
Okay,
gonna
good.
invite
No,
Civil
no.
War.
Yeah.
You
Don't
get
do
a
that.
you get a benefit. What do you call it? Like a special exemption from the Pope.
Well, I didn't mean to have you guys all on the same weekend. I mean, on the next 2 weeks in a row. I appreciate it, but that wasn't originally my intention. I just, got mixed up with stuff. So
No, yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna go back to read Golden Age, or I guess Silver Age is where I need to be. Sounds like.
Yeah.
They're both good. They both have good qualities. Yeah.
Superman Birthright's also a great starter Superman story.
That's the Mark
Okay.
Waid one, right?
Yeah,
It's
It is.
okay.
it's
I
it's
read
a
the
good.
first issue and I was underwhelmed. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought a lot of the changes to lore were stupid.
It's not perfect, but in terms of like starting someone off to like Superman, if you're not starting off liking Superman, it's a good like book to hand to someone to be like, hey,
Personally-
start liking Superman.
I would actually start with the last one, Alan Moore's "Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow." It's
Oh,
that-
see, I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I feel like whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow works if you've get the big old library Superman's greatest hits of the Silver Age, and if you like Superman's greatest hits of the Silver Age, you'll really dig whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. But he's going to be name dropping tons and tons and tons of lore stuff.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true.
Yeah,
That's
I don't think it's. I'm not saying it's not a good story. I'm just saying it's not a good starter story. Oh my goodness,
You
we're
might
starting.
be right.
We're
You might
starting
be right.
another stream.
Although if you-
Watch the Superman animated series. There you go.
There you go. That'd be good. The other
That's
another good suggestion that I don't think it's too lore heavy, but I really like it was Under a Yellow Sun, which is a superhero story, a Superman story that also is part of a novel that Clark is writing. So
Oh, cool.
real events and fictional events interlace in it, and it's pretty fun.
I think I'm actually going to start with the one where he's born. I guess he lands in the USSR. I kind of want to.
Oh, Red
Okay.
Sun.
Red
Son,
Sun.
I haven't read that one.
Yeah.
I hear
I
it's
like
good,
that one, yeah.
but I don't know. I haven't read it yet. But anyhow, yeah,
Cool.
that's it. We're done. We're gonna call it. We gotta
Beautiful.
hang on. There are a couple of things in the chat I think I missed. No, we're good.
James agrees with Marm's assessment.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, James. Yeah.
So, okay, guys, we're gonna wrap it. We're gonna put a bow on it and come back next week for who knows what's next. I think it's Civil War.
Civil War.
Oh, bye.
You guys.